Good morning. Mr. Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Speaker, we have quorum.
I call this meeting of City Council for December 17th, 2025 to order and acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Innu, and the Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. We'll now have the opening prayer. Please rise if you are able, and we'll hear from Councillor Wyatt.
This is a prayer by one of the most prolific writers in the 20th century in terms of spirituality, Thomas Burton. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think that I am following your will does not mean that I'm actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I'm doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. Amen.
Thank you. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma, His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Rawadi, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Durandwood, Eadie, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Orlico, Rollins, Santos, and Wyatt.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you read the notice for today's special meeting into the record?
Yes. A special meeting of Council has been called for Wednesday, December 17th, 2025 at 9:30 a.m. in the Council Chamber, Council Building to consider the following matters. Report of the Winnipeg Police Board dated December 5th, 2025. Item 1, Winnipeg Police Board Preliminary 2026 Budget Update. Report of the Executive Policy Committee dated December 16th, 2025. Item 1, Executive Policy Committee Final Recommendation Preliminary 2026 Budget Update. And the following bylaws. Bylaw number 131 of 2025. Bylaw number 122 of 2025, bylaw number 123 of 2025, bylaw number 124 of 2025, bylaw number 125 of 2025, bylaw number 126 of 2025, and bylaw number 127 of 2025. The approval from the Mayor has been received in accordance with Section 7.6 of the Procedure Bylaw number 50 of 2007 and pursuant to the requirements of the City of Winnipeg Charter. No other subject matter other than the outlined in this notice shall be considered at the meeting.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to welcome our pages for today's meeting. Joining us for the first time, please welcome Kira DeCastro from St. Mary's Academy, who resides in the Old Kildonan Ward, and Xander Woodley from the Elmwood High School, who resides in the Elmwood East Kildonan Ward. Thank you for joining Council today. There's no announcements today, given that it's a special meeting, so we'll go right into delegations. Joining us remotely is Lauren Remillard, President and CEO of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, appearing in support of Report 1 of the Executive Policy Committee dated December 16th, the preliminary 2026 budget update. Lauren, are you with us? Welcome.
Thank you. Oh, I can start?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, Mayor Gillingham, and members of City Council for the opportunity to appear before you today. Established in 1873, the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce is Winnipeg's largest business organization. We represent more than 2,000 members from all sizes and all sectors, working every day to strengthen our economy by creating jobs that open new pathways for growth and opportunities for residents. On behalf of the Winnipeg Chamber, I'm pleased to appear before you today in support of the preliminary 2026 budget update. As with every budget, the feedback is vast. Residents from across the city have and will continue to share their views both on the positive elements and the areas that require attention. Our support for the preliminary budget does not overlook its imperfections. Rather, it considers the document as a whole. Through that lens, the budget outlines key investments in our city's growth. Going into this year's budget cycle, our chamber was looking for investments that would maintain business confidence in Winnipeg as a place to build, invest, and grow their companies. Moving forward, though, The budget should be presented in terms of overall budget goals, the outcomes sought, and the key performance indicators to measure the impact of changing inputs. By changing inputs, of course, I'm talking about the investments and spending. People are much more likely to buy into greater investments in strategic areas if they can clearly see the goal and the progress being made toward it. Right now, budgets are often presented as, here's how much more we are spending, and here's what you're buying for that, but rarely do we present it in terms of, and this is what you got for it. Competitiveness. The budget needs to ensure investments advance the city not only as a great place to live, but also as a place to work and invest. We were looking at the budget to ensure it would invest in improving business processes and advance a customer service culture at City Hall. The goal should be to make Winnipeg the easiest city to do business, not necessarily the fastest, though it would be great if we could do both. Fiscal stability, ensuring replenishment of the fiscal stabilization reserve while also ensuring budgeting processes and policies are sound and sustainable. To the first point, the City of Winnipeg, like most Canadian municipalities, is facing mounting cost pressures. While this year's rate increases are necessary, it is equally important to demonstrate the city's efforts to improve operations. We commend the city's continuous improvement work as the annual report highlights the benefits realized from the projects undertaken in this initiatives. This is what we mean when we say set your objectives, your outcomes desired, and measure towards them. Our chamber would like to see a similar approach in the next budget with clear expected outcomes and KPIs. For example, how can Winnipeggers expect their service level to improve with 10 new full-time equivalents allocated in the budget to the permitting department? Are we just adding resources with no idea as to what the outcome will be? Or are we saying we expect this additional resource to achieve this result? And measure that, have the confidence to be able to say, we're setting the goalpost and we're going to measure progress. When permit or inspection process times improve, businesses save money and by avoiding costly delays, and in turn can afford a slightly adjusted fee if it delivers a clear, measurable benefit. The saying holds, time is money. Second, our city is at a cusp projected to reach 1 million residents by 2050. With a report this month at EPC detailing NUPIC, or North End Water Pollution Control Center, dwindling capacity, the urgency is clear. If this project does not move forward, it risks halting Winnipeg's physical and economic growth. We continue to support the city's efforts to secure federal and provincial funding. Earlier this month, we raised this project with Premier Canoe at the State of the Province address. In terms of building business confidence, this budget includes several notable actions. 1 million for youth programming, including 150,000 for downtown youth, a direct recommendation from our members during community safety consultations. Continued funding for DCSP community safety officers and police, 36 transit full-time equivalents that will assist in the new system's success. Many of our members had raised concerns about employees being unable to work evening and night shifts due to reduced service hours, so it is encouraging to see progress on addressing this. The last area I wish to speak to, of course, is the fiscal stabilization reserve, which is projected to remain significantly below the minimum balance of 85 million, a continued concern for the chamber. We are committed to working with council on behalf of our members to identify future opportunities for efficiencies and better outcomes for all Winnipeggers. In conclusion, the chamber believes the budget strikes a responsible balance between addressing the pressing economic and social needs today with an eye to the investments in the future. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I welcome any questions.
Any questions for our delegation? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Lauren, for your presentation. Have a good day.
You as well.
Our next delegation is presenting in person. Adrian Hobbs of United Firefighters of Winnipeg is appearing in opposition to the same item, the report of the Executive Policy Committee dated December 16th, the preliminary 2026 budget update. I do want to remind folks in the gallery that there are no presentations in any way from the gallery. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Adrian Hobbs. I am a single mom of 2 girls, and I'm a firefighter paramedic with the Winnipeg Fire Department. I've worked downtown at Station 1 for 4 years. It's one of the busiest fire stations in North America. And before that, I worked as a paramedic on an ambulance here in Winnipeg through COVID, and before that I spent 10 years as a firefighter paramedic in Thompson, which is a remote community with no meaningful mutual aid, and a crew of 5 responding to critical fire and medical emergencies. I love my job. I always have. But I'm here today because this budget does not reflect the reality of the work we do, or the cost of continuing to under-resource it. You already have the numbers. You've paid for decades of studies telling you that we were short firefighters as far back as 2009. Last year, we exceeded the call volume projected for 2040 by 20,000 calls. And yet this budget proposes hiring 10 firefighters per year over 4 years. Hiring 10 firefighters per year assumes that we have time to catch up. We don't. It spreads an existing crisis over 4 more years, while overtime and burnout continue to carry the load. I'm not here to repeat statistics. I'm here to tell you what those numbers look like in real life. I signed up for this job 16 years ago, and they trained me how to force doors, advance hose lines, and survive on the fire ground. What they didn't train me for was how to carry what we see. We don't just witness trauma, we absorb it. It becomes a part of us. Sights and sounds that get imprinted on the walls of our minds for a lifetime. When I walk into my station at 7 a.m., I'm relieving another firefighter, taking the weight they've been carrying and putting it on my own back. And I do that for 48 hours a week. And then there's overtime. On my days off, I'm called in sometimes 3 times a week, up to 38 extra hours. Not because we want more money, but because if we don't answer, a truck gets booked off duty. A coverage area is left short, and citizens wait longer, sometimes fatally, for help. So when my mental and physical health allow, I go. And those overtime shifts come with trauma that was never mine to carry. While working overtime, I've responded to the cardiac arrest of a 3-year-old girl drowned in a bathtub. I can still feel her cool skin, and I can still see the bruises from abuse. I've responded to a 16-year-old girl whose leg was crushed under a bus while she tried to get home. Her life changed forever that night. I've picked up the lifeless body of a 14-year-old girl thrown from a vehicle at nearly 200 kilometers an hour by a drunk driver. The guttural scream of her mother is something I will carry for the rest of my life. And it's a sound I've heard more times than I care to say. We also respond after police leave to wash down public scenes so no one else has to see what remains. Blood and tissue and bone fragments. I've found victims so badly burned in a fire that we don't even move them. These are not rare calls. They are routine. And these examples all happened on overtime. Extra shifts, extra trauma. When people experience trauma in their own lives, they pause. They grieve and they recover. We don't. We reset, we clean up, and we wait for the next call. And sometimes the wait becomes too much. Last year, one of our brothers, Preston Heinbigner, died by suicide due to PTSD from doing this job. Let me be very clear. We are killing ourselves serving this city. That's not metaphor. That's not dramatic language. It is a fact. We are resilient. We are strong. But we're not unlimited. This job permanently rewires our nervous systems. We run on adrenaline and caffeine, and then we're expected to keep holding the system together with overtime. I just need 1 minute and I'll be able to finish.
Councillor Rollins moves extension.
Thank you.
2 minutes, all in favor? Contrary, carried.
Thank you. Your words of appreciation mean nothing without action. Do not thank us for our service while approving a budget that knowingly keeps us understaffed. We're not asking for more firefighters because we're selfish. We are begging because we are exhausted. Because the money you already spend on overtime could be used to build a workforce that doesn't break its people. You don't take survival training to go to work, but we do. You don't walk into your office expecting violence, but we do. And we do it over and over again. So I don't want to hear thank yous. I want to hear that help is coming. And I will continue to show up for my scheduled shifts, but I cannot keep sacrificing my health and my family to compensate for a budget that refuses to confront reality. So when there's no truck available and no firefighter to respond, no one to stop the fire or save a life, it will not be because we didn't care. It will be because you chose not to. Thank you.
Adrian, we have another presentation on the same topic. I'll ask you to stay on the bench, and I'll call forward Nick Casper, appearing in opposition to the same item. There'll be 5 minutes on the clock, and following that, we'll take any questions. Welcome.
Good morning. I don't think I can say it any more clearly. Your firefighters show up every day, knowing the risks, accepting the sacrifice, and trusting that when evidence is clear, council will act in good faith. And let me be clear, today that trust is being tested. If this budget passes as proposed, it will not fail firefighters or the public we serve because council lacked information. It will fail them in spite of it. For more than 20 years, city commissioned audits, reviews, financial analysis, strategic plans have all reached the same conclusion. The Winnipeg Fire Department is severely understaffed. Understaffing is the root cause of overtime, and overtime fuels a vicious cycle of fatigue, rising injury rates, and declining service reliability. Today, the service is over 80 critical positions short across all branches. This is not a marginal gap, it's a structural deficit. We operate fire suppression at a 1.29 staffing ratio compared to a city recommended minimum of 1.35. And in a system this size, that represents more than 60 frontline personnel essential to keeping trucks in service and stations open. We're not here talking about gold plating our service. We're talking about achieving a baseline that should have been met years ago. Winnipeg continues to spend more than $10 million every year on overtime, and since 2018, that total exceeds $56 million. These numbers are not in dispute. We're not asking council to find new revenue, raise taxes, or cut existing services. The money is already being spent in the most inefficient and harmful way possible. The question before you today is whether to keep accelerating burnout, harming our staff, crippling the system Winnipeg relies on 24/7. We've heard the argument that adding firefighters to the same system simply perpetuates the problem. And in reality, this budget does exactly that. Years of austerity is not fiscal responsibility, it is managed decline. In 2026, call volumes will increase. In 2026, injuries will climb and overtime will number in the millions, yet the staffing added in this budget accounts for only 15% of that expenditure. Firefighters are exhausted. They're selling their holidays, working up to 70 additional shifts per year. The system has been running on borrowed time, and that time has run out. At SPC, the fire chief confirmed what we have been warning for years. Response times are significantly slower than they should be. Our fire incident rate is 25% higher than our closest peer, and fire and medical incidents continue to climb, already exceeding 2040 projections. By those metrics, Winnipeg is the poorest performing fire department among major Canadian cities. The fire chief was also clear that he and the union are saying the same thing. He requested 40 FTEs in 2026. That number was identified to the budget savings team as required to stabilize staffing, reduce overtime reliance, and protect firefighter health and safety. But even 40 positions would not resolve our performance issues. With full allotment, we'd still be only halfway to where the city's own strategic direction said we should have been 4 years ago in a city whose demand has since exceeded every projection. This budget also exposes another serious issue. Council understands that WFPS delivers EMS under a service purchase agreement with Shared Health on a full cost recovery basis. Additional EMS staffing and resources should therefore be net zero to city ratepayers, just as the additional paramedic positions reflected in the budget are. In 2024, WFPS recorded 17,600 hours of compensable time lost to psychological injury. Proportionally, our EMS colleagues accounted for 10 times the time loss of fire. Budget 2026 introduces 11 new wellness positions fully funded by the city's operating budget, which raises a fundamental question. Why should city taxpayers fully fund wellness positions whose work will primarily address EMS time loss when Council has declared that EMS services are to be provided on a full cost recovery basis? Proportional cost recovery would free up resources to address the true cause of the city's problem, and that's firefighter understaffing. This is not in opposition to wellness. It's a call for upstream preventative investment that reduces injury and burnout before they occur. Administration was clear. 40 frontline firefighters were required. Budget savings team approved 10. At the same time, administration identified the need for 11 wellness officers. We funded all 11. Prioritizing administration over boots on the ground sends a clear message to the front line. So today, the choice before you is simple. Approve a budget that knowingly maintains a documented staffing deficiency, or amend the budget, provide the fire chief with the resources he has formally identified as necessary. 40 firefighters in 2026, funded through reallocation of dollars you already know will be spent. This isn't about politics, it's about evidence, responsibility, and public safety. There is no gray area, and your stance on this issue will define your position on public safety in 2026. Thank you all for your work. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Nick Casper. There are a few questions. I'll ask Adrian to come forward once again. We'll start with Councillor Wyatt.
Yeah, thank you. I've been here for many budgets, but I don't recall one quite like this, where we have been so juxtaposed in terms of council versus one of our major services. I know in the past we've always tried to work together to try to achieve or address the challenges the city may face at any given time. So I find this a very unique budget in that sense, because I've never seen anything quite like this in all the budgets we've done. And I guess I call this the A&E budget, the Allard Eady budget, because they had a hand in writing it directly, rising of water and sewer rates by 300%, closing of pools, and now this. I would like to get your comments with regards to what you were saying about the province and the provincial government and the shared health services. Because when I talked to the chief, and I've talked to him about this, he says we're fully funded when it comes to our EMS. So in his perspective, he thinks we're fully funded now because the paramedic side is 100% covered. But what you're saying basically is that you are also responding to these medical calls out on the streets. Often you're the first to arrive prior to the paramedics, just because the nature of the fact that your apparatus is closer or what have you. And that should be funded as well by shared health, but it is not now. Could you elaborate a bit on that, please?
Thank you for the question. Reminding everyone, questions and responses will come to the chair. Mr. Casper?
Thank you. Through the chair to the councillor, thank you for your question. Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service, as you know, operates a unique integrated service model. We're one of the only services in Canada that does so. It's a beneficial model in a number of ways. It saves from duplication of services, it saves the province money delivering EMS, and it saves the city ratepayer significantly in the cost of delivering fire services. We pay less per capita for fire service funding than our comparable cities across the country, according to MNBC data. There was a time in history when this council, this city, funded a portion, 25% of EMS service delivery in the province. I believe it was 2018 when council voted to move to full cost recovery, meaning any cost associated with the delivery of ambulance, paramedic, EMS service by the City of Winnipeg through its service purchase agreement would be recovered in full from the province, and that's why that line item is $0 in your budget. There is some grant funding that comes from the provincial government to assist with the funding of firefighter paramedics on the trucks, but most certainly that funding is not providing us the resources we need to continue doing that work. When I started 20 years ago, we were the busiest department in Canada with trucks running 4,000 calls a year. We delivered that integrated service with the contingent that we had. Those trucks are running 8,000 calls a year today. And we have not added a single fire truck in that time. In fact, we've taken one away. We can't expect a city to continue to grow in population, for its call volume to exceed 3 times per capita other services across the country, and for us to say our apparatus availability has declined from 95% to 65%, but we can still voluntarily take on the added burden of EMS service delivery without introducing any additional resources. And so that is an issue that needs to be addressed. I think that needs to be addressed through contract with the province. As far as today's budget goes, the wellness officer positions are not just there for firefighters. We didn't fund 11 wellness officers to address 1/10 of the time loss in WFPS. But 9/10 of the time loss is being covered by the provincial government. The overtime cost is being covered by the provincial government. But our taxpayer resources will go to those officers designed to get those paramedics back to work.
Okay, thank you for the response.
Thank you.
Second question.
Further to both your presentations, I'd like to get a better idea of exactly what you're seeing out there, because really you're on the front line of the elephant in the room, and we might as well I call it the urban health crisis taking place in the streets of Winnipeg today. Mental health and addiction issue being unfolding daily, 24/7 out there. How has it changed in the last, let's say, 4 years or less in terms of what you've seen and what members see? What has really changed? And it seems it's gotten just a heck of a lot worse. And that's, a Winnipegger observing this, but I think all Winnipeggers are seeing this. And I can tell you in the last election, if I just may, Madam Speaker, in the last
Question's
election.
been posed. Councillor Wyatt.
Very good. I'll
hear the
send the
response.
next
Thank
question.
you.
Thanks.
Through the chair, thank you to the councillor for your question. The service has changed. In 2020, the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service published the first of its kind, first ever in its history, 2020 Strategic Direction Detail, comprised of the master plan, the community risk assessment standards would cover the fire underwriter survey. That plan, that direction in 2020 outlined a path forward for the service to compensate for a growing city and continue to provide services. It identified that we were critically short and underperforming at that time, and we risked not being able to deliver the mandated services that were required. And in 2020, this strategic direction detail estimated with population growth, our call volume would climb to 133,000 calls by 2040. In the period, 3-4 year period since then, vacant structure fires went up 245%. Structure fires went up dozens and dozens of percent. Medical calls, dozens of percent. Our apparatus availability continued to decline. Our response times continued to increase. We are facing more calls than any service in North America, and we're not able to keep up. And we're seeing that in outcomes. Houses are burning to the ground with fire trucks taking 15 minutes to arrive. Family members are doing CPR on their loved one while their children watch for a quarter of an hour before the first crew walks in the door. And for the people who have signed up to sacrifice, to bear the weight of witnessing that trauma and doing our best to help, it's one thing to walk in the door and do everything you can and go home knowing that that person didn't make it. It's an entirely different animal to walk in the door knowing you already failed them, that this effort is futile, and that you also live in this city and expect the service to be delivered to your family. And what if it was my family? And what if it was my wife doing CPR on me for a quarter of an hour? It's not acceptable. People cannot live knowing that they failed before they even arrived. And that's what's changed in our service delivery model. We have not allocated the resources necessary to keep up with the demand. And the demand has exceeded our wildest expectations.
Final question.
Yeah, I know I said tongue-in-cheek the A&E budget, but the reality is we've had 2 chairs of finance that have written budgets which have ensured that we are always in a position of scarcity in the city rather than planning for the future. So I guess my final question is, how do we get out of this mess going forward? Do we start with this budget, or we just throw it and say, well, this is a 1-year budget, let's work on it starting next year? How critical is it that we start addressing this now in terms of what you're seeing out there?
Thank you. Through the chair to the councillor, thank you for your question. It's absolutely critical, and let me be clear. This is not my opinion. This is not my belief. This is not offering something I've come up with on my own. This is your reports, your strategic direction, your consultants, your City of Winnipeg Audit Department. This issue first arose in the early 2000s when we had overtime numbers between 1.5 to 2 million. We became concerned with $2 million in expenditure. At that point, we commissioned an audit and we said, how do we fix this problem? We're spending too much money, it's inefficient. And the audit was unequivocal, and it reported to Council in 2009 that the issue is your staffing ratio. You have not hired enough people to compensate for the allotment of vacation, sick time use, increasing diversity within the organization, maternity leave, and WCB rates. And as we attend more calls and are exposed to more physical and mental stressors, WCB rates climb, and in 2009, they recommended a 1.34 to 1.35 staffing ratio to be reassessed on an annual basis. To date, that recommendation has not been moved upon in the decades since. The only change to our staffing ratio we've seen was an injection of $3.4 million from the provincial government, which moved us from 1.28 up 0.01% to 1.29. Every report back to Council and Finance from the financial controller has said the same thing. We need to address the staffing ratio, and until we do, we will continue to spend millions and millions and millions. We've seen the trajectory, and I'm not sure how much more clearly it can be said. So that is the solution, and I would argue that the best time to have implemented that solution would have been in 2009. We're in a very, very deep hole at this point, but pushing it off another year is just going to make it more expensive and the outcomes worse. So today is the opportunity to act.
Thank you. Next question, noting there's no time on the clock. Okay, Councillor Wyatt, standard is 5 minutes, usually we start with, so Councillor Wyatt moves 5-minute extension. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried. It's usually 2, but we do go to 5. Councillor Mason, Councillor Gilroy.
Question for Ms. Hobbs, I think. You said something that stayed with me, which was we're not looking for the overtime. I mean, I think, like Councillor Wyatt, I've been here a while. We used to get these presentations of, well, here's the overtime use, and, you know, person A is calling in sick on the Monday so their friend can get the overtime shift, and then friend calls in 2 weeks later, it's sick, and then it's a income enhancement strategy. But I'm struck by your comments. You're saying, I have a full-time job. I don't need the overtime. I don't want the overtime. I mean, I think this is really a change in sort of how this place has operated over the last 10 years. Can you speak a bit about that? Because, I mean, a decade ago, I think we were told, well, they're doing this to get more money. And you're saying, I don't want the overtime. So I want you to hire more firefighters. So just if you can speak a bit about that.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to go ahead and say that that notion is a little insulting to all of us, quite frankly, at this point in time. 10 years ago, it might have been feasible for us to say, yeah, you know what, I would love to pick up an extra shift this week to be able to pay for XYZ for my wife and kids, husband and kids, whatever. What we saw on the streets 10 years ago versus what we're seeing today, like the call volume, the building fires, like being on a fire ground, hearing a mayday, things like that, like we need to be able to process that and absorb it. So for, like, if you're gonna suggest that I would book off today so that my friend could get overtime and they would book off for me next week so I could get overtime, that's not the case. Like, oftentimes we're starting short without booking off. Like, we have a contingent of 167 firefighters that have to be on shift every day. And just because of WCB rates and the holidays that were allotted, we often will start a shift less than 167, and then you have firefighters booking off on illness because of the call volume or even just general life. Like, I'm sure, sorry, you guys have all had sick days. You have children you have to take care of. You have responsibilities in that manner, and so do we. And quite frankly, working 70+ hours a week means that, yeah, when my shift rolls around on Monday, I'm probably not feeling up to the task, and maybe I will end up having to book off because my mental health has suffered or my physical health has suffered, and I can't go to work today.
Thank you, Adrian. Next question.
No, thank you for that. That's very well said, so thank you.
Okay. Next is Councillor Gilroy, followed by Councillor Rollins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, Madam Speaker. As you probably are not aware that there is a motion on the floor to add 20 FTEs in 2026. The cost is around $700,000, and can you talk about that cost, like what that would mean in 2026, what that would mean in terms of us having to pay the overtime? Can you connect those dots? I know that we had a really great discussion about that at the committee level, but I don't know if everyone's heard that. Thank you.
Through the chair to the councillor, thank you for your question, and we're very pleased to hear that there's a motion on the floor. To put this into perspective, through the months of the year, we were spending nearly $1 million per month on overtime. We were tracking it as we went. Hundreds of thousands of dollars per week on overtime you're paying senior officers to come in at double time rates when you could be paying people in a resource pool at the lowest introductory wage to come in and do that. And, those senior officers are incurring chronic and acute occupational exposure that's leading to WCB time, and we're paying for them on that end. So, yeah, I mean, you heard it not from my mouth at SPC, but when you asked the public service and the fire chief and the financial controller, what impact would we see doubling the resources in 2026? And they said, the sooner we can get people hired, the faster we can reduce overtime, and the earlier we can take the stress off our staff who are at their max. They welcome that news. I mean, they came to you asking for 40 because that's what they needed. John Hull is an incredible at his role. He's done the math. 40 wasn't pulled out of a hat, and 40 would only get us halfway to where we needed to be 5 years ago. So 20 is a step in the right direction,
Councillor
and it would
Duncan
benefit us.
moves extension for an additional 5 minutes. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Okay. Councillor Gilroy, second question.
Thank you. And can you talk a little bit more so everyone that maybe wasn't at the committee can hear about the comparisons of other cities in Canada compared to the call volumes we're getting, compared to the costs that we're delivering at? Can you make those comparisons so everyone can hear and understand that?
Through the chair to the councillor, thank you for your question, and we appreciated the opportunity to appear at Standing Policy Committee along with our administration and financial controller, and those folks pointed out, and it was asked by the committee to verify the delegates' input, and they said we are saying the same thing. And so your budget and your benchmarking relies on MNBC reports comparing our municipality with municipalities across Canada with service delivery. And it has been clearly identified when compared to other municipalities. Number one, our fire service is below cost, below average. Number two, our call volume is 3 to 4 times per capita the call volume of other cities, and in fact our total call volume exceeds cities twice our size. We see that we are the slowest responding department in Canada, with a benchmark of 4 minutes adopted across the country. 5 years ago we were at 8 minutes and 20 seconds, and that number has continued to decline. He has said our service is slower than it should be. And the outcomes that our service provides, what matters when Winnipeggers call 911, how quickly is somebody going to be there, and am I going to walk away from this, or is my house going to survive? The City of Winnipeg sees the highest rate of loss to structure fires anywhere in Canada.
And
Thank you. Councillor Gilroy.
And my last question, Madam Speaker, through you, is how much is the average overtime that we are seeing right now? Because, of course, if we're looking at hiring more firefighters, it would alleviate some of that. So just can you talk about the average overtime that we're seeing right now for firefighters, paramedics?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Councillor. I'll do my best to address it. So overtime is driven by staffing ratio. That's unequivocal. This is what we know to be true. As Ms. Hobbs pointed out earlier, when we start our shift, we require 167 firefighters on duty to keep the trucks going and the lights on. Our current staffing ratio, 1.28, affords us a cushion of approximately 40 positions. And that cushion is intended to cover holiday allotment, illness, WCB, maternity leave, you name it, every reason for absence. We are seeing shifts where we're starting 60, 70 people short when we have a cushion of 40, necessitating over 30 firefighters being called in per day. And each of those firefighters are taking on additional workload, additional opportunities for injury, and it's costing the taxpayer double time. I mean, the union standing here before you with people who have doubled their salaries, asking you to pay our members less money. We heard Councillor Mays earlier. We don't need some kind of scheme to book off to pass one on. Number one, our members love coming to work. I know people who have retired never using a sick day. Our members hate being off work. But the phone doesn't stop ringing. And if people didn't want to come to work, they wouldn't sell their holidays for straight time, by the way. That's not an overtime sale. We sell our holidays back to you at straight time, and we've done it throughout COVID in an attempt, a good faith attempt to reduce overtime demand, and even that's not enough. And holidays are rehab and recovery from our members. They need that time to decompress, or they're going to break, and they are broken.
Thank you for the response. Councillor Rollins, followed by Councillor Chambers.
So, Madam Speaker, my question is simple, a matter of clarification. I want to know, this budget, the question is, does this budget get it wrong? Does this budget get it wrong? Where instead of hiring 10 FTEs for the front line, does this budget get it wrong by hiring psychologists? Does this budget get it wrong? Is the right answer a clear swap for the positions that are in budget direct to the front line? What's their answer?
Through
Time on the clock. Okay. Councillor Wyatt moves 5-minute extension. All in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Through the chair to the councillor, thank you for your question. The answer is yes. One of these is a need to have, and one of these is a nice to have. And these 11 wellness positions are not going to be psychologists. They're going to be, return to work staff who are a downstream approach, working with employees who have already been injured. These individuals will not be picking up the phone and answering overtime. These individuals will not be on a truck responding to the city of Winnipeg when they call 911 and helping to reduce our response times or improve service outcomes. These positions will react to an ever-increasing volume of injury and WCB time loss that will continue to climb until we address the root cause that has been irrefuted for decades. And would we like to have both? Absolutely. On a cost-benefit analysis, is one of more value than the other? Absolutely. When Winnipeggers call 911, they want a firefighter paramedic on a fire truck at their door. And what do firefighter paramedics want? What does the administration want? And what do the experts say? We need more firefighter paramedics to deliver that service. So, if we had our house together and our foundation was stable, I would absolutely advocate for adding an addition on or putting a pool. But our foundation is crumbling, and that foundation is the men and women who deliver the service on the front line who are being asked to do
Thank
more
you for
with
the
less.
Response. Councillor Rollins, next question.
Second question, do you think Winnipeggers can understand this budget move, in your opinion? Basically not having 10 on the front line, but having, 11 on the back office?
The response, please.
Through the chair to the councillor, thank you for your question. One thing matters more to me in this position than the outcome of this meeting today, and it's the trust that my members place in me and the trust that Winnipeggers place in my members. And as firefighters and paramedics on the front line, we're very fortunate to have earned the trust of Winnipeggers the hard way, and we know that trust rating on this issue is 98%. We commissioned a $15,000 probe survey, and that survey was unequivocal in its response. It reached out to Winnipeggers and said, are you aware of this issue? Who do you trust on this issue, and what are your thoughts? And this is an important issue to Winnipeggers. They know what's happening. They woefully disagree with continuing to understaff the department, paying money for overtime. They completely agree that overtime is negatively affecting their firefighters and paramedics' mental health. They're not happy with what they see in this budget. They expect it to be changed, and that issue will matter to them in 2026. And that's
Thank you for the response.
Let's say there's a motion right before me that adds firefighters, 20 to 15 FTEs. Would you want council to have a unanimous vote on that motion for this budget and amend the budget?
The response?
I thank you for your question, Councillor. I don't think it's about what I want at this point. You good folks are elected to represent the cities of Winnipeg. It's the city of Winnipeg, the people that I'm in a position to serve, and my members are in a position to serve, and their position on that question is we know the answer, and the answer is yes. We would expect nothing less than council to apply a common sense approach to this, do the right thing, and send a message to their firefighters that in your time of need, we have your back, and to Winnipeggers, that in this time of crisis, we're making financially responsible decisions with your interests in mind. So I would hope that to be the case.
Thank you. Councillor Chambers, followed by Councillor Santos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker, through you to the delegation. How many members would you currently have on accommodations where they're not available for work?
Yeah, thank you through the chair to the councillor. Thank you for your question. I asked yesterday what the total leave was accounting for all reasons. That's WCB, LTD, maternity leave. And I believe the number provided to me was 70? 76. Thank you. I apologize. Yeah, 76.
What
Second
percentage
question.
of those would be on leave because of a physical injury versus a mental health injury?
It's a fantastic question. So WCB statistics, and I'm not privy to the City of Winnipeg specific statistics, but I can tell you that physical injury rates occur far more frequently than psychological injury rates. It's always been at a much higher proportion. For example, we work a very physical job. We run into burning buildings. My last shift, I went to 3 separate fires, and at 2 of those fires, 2 of my crew members fell through the floor. Not the same fire, separate fires. Those 2 crew members finished their shift and continued their tour after falling through the floor of a burning building. We have a very physically demanding job. Injuries occur, but psychological injuries.
Okay. Councillor Wyatt moves motion, extension of 5 minutes. All in favour? Contrary? Carried.
While psychological injuries occur at a lower volume, the cost of those injuries and the duration can often be longer and cost more. So it is a growing issue of concern for this department, for WCB, and our union, on recommendation of WCB, has done a survey of our membership, and we've identified the 13 psychosocial factors that impact psychological health in the workplace. And I can tell you that that survey demonstrates a workplace in crisis. We undertook that on the recommendation of WCB because we are a system impact employer. We went and got credentialed at Red River, and we've now funded to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars from funds that our members have raised, mental health resources. We just sent 9 members to resiliency training in British Columbia. They describe it as the most profound experience of their life. We send members down to the States at a cost of $50,000 American for residential inpatient treatment. And these are the types of interventions, along with our BHU staff, that are keeping people not only at work, but keeping people alive. And those resources are where we need to focus our energy into the BHU
There's
contract.
another question here. Councillor Chambers, no. Next, Councillor Santos, followed by Councillor Wyatt and Councillor Duncan.
Just
Yes.
some questions just for clarity. Would you agree that the challenges facing firefighters today, including mental health crisis, addictions, encampments, and social complexity, are fundamentally different than the issues we were responding to 5 or even actually 10 years ago?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. We're firefighters. We're not politicians. We're not public health. Unfortunately, the reality is we are not a preventative upstream service delivery model. We are an insurance program for the city. We are called when crisis has occurred, and so We all know that there's many social determinants of health. We all know that Winnipeg has many, many factors that cause the outcomes we see. But for firefighters and paramedics, the calls we're responding to are fundamentally the same. The outcome is no different. A house is on fire. It doesn't matter why the house is on fire. We respond and we put it out. But when it does come to preventative upstream measures like fire prevention, we were 11 positions short in fire prevention 5 years ago. When it comes to investigating the cause of fires, our fire investigations branch was half the size that it needed to be 11 years ago. Since then, fire call volumes have increased hundreds of %. Public education officers were short 2/3 of their requirement 5 years ago. Since then, call volumes up hundreds of %. So, we are failing not only in preventing the cause and working to address it, but also in responding to. So we've heard projections and estimates and interventions. How can we reduce our call volume? If a councillor in this room could wave a magic wand and take us back 50,000 calls, we would still be short all of those positions in 2020. We're just that much deeper today. So prevention is important, but so is being realistic and delivering services that are
Thank
required.
you. Second question.
Yes, last week at Community Services Committee, you emphasized that firefighters need time off or need their vacation to decompress and recover. At the same time, we've also heard that some members are selling multiple weeks of vacation and working overtime. Can you help council understand how those two realities align?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I thank you for it. This is the challenge we face daily. We are here because we are givers. We're people who want to serve the public, and we have a very close bond with the people that we stand shoulder to shoulder with, who we need to rely on to pull us out of a fire, literal fire in a Mayday situation when our life is on the line. Our members, we know through our survey, they are coming into work broken. These are people who need help, and the reason that they're answering the phone, the reason that they're selling their holidays at straight time, when they could take their holidays and work overtime the whole time, by the way, is because they feel an obligation to the Winnipeggers who call us, and they feel an obligation to the people they ride alongside in the truck. If Adrian doesn't show up to work tomorrow, that truck goes off duty, and the truck beside them takes twice the calls and doesn't have any backup, and some Winnipeg family waits 15 minutes for us to arrive, and that's why we continue to go in, despite knowing that it's bad for our health, that it's hurting us, that it's harming us, because we're selfless, we're givers. We accept that burden so that others may feel safe. And even with that extraordinary effort, we're drowning here.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. You're moving an extension, are you? For 5 minutes. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. And your final question, Councillor Santos.
Thank you. And from the union's perspective, how do you balance the importance of firefighters taking time off to protect their mental health with the current practice of selling vacation and working additional shifts?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I want to make one thing absolutely clear, and that is our mandate and our number one driving force is to be there for Winnipeggers when they need us. We will, regardless of the outcome today, just as it's been the outcome for the last 2 decades, we will continue to do our absolute best and give everything that we have to ensure that we're there when we're needed. And there are 130 names on a wall blocks from here of our members who have made the ultimate sacrifice in answering that call. And that is unparalleled across any public service. And so you can be assured that your firefighters will be the ones giving everything. All we're asking for in return for that sacrifice is to give us the tools we need to be there for you.
Thank you. Next set of questions, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And first off, thank you very much for your service to the city and the members that are here today. Appreciate all the work that's being done there. It's not easy out in the field. Obviously, it becomes more and more challenging. My question is more of a point of clarification here around a conversation that's taking place. Some councillors have asked questions. I don't believe they are accurate in their numbers, but are you aware that on page 56, I apologize, of the service-based budget overview 2D, the fire paramedic service established a wellness clinic of 9 FTEs prorated to 5.5 in 2026. I believe the number that you may have been referencing and that some of my colleagues are referencing is the 11.5 that is funded strictly from shared health that enhances the low acuity triage, referred to as acronym ELAT, as well as the Community Paramedic Initiative Program, also funded fully by shared health. Are you aware?
Through the chair, I thank you first, Councillor, for your comments, and coming from you, I think we all appreciate those. Knowing your background, I believe they're genuine, and we appreciate the work you do as well. To your point, I apologize, I may have misspoken. I thought I read 11 wellness positions. Obviously, it's 9. I will say my input on those 9 wellness positions being funded by the taxpayer stands. I am familiar with the community paramedicine and ELAT positions that are, of course, funded 100% by the province, but I thank you for your correction on that, and I apologize for misspeaking.
Okay. Second question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No need to apologize. So we have yourself there clearly advocating for the front line, also your colleague here advocating for the front line. However, explaining to us the damages that occur to the front line with the mental health impacts. My caution on this would be that if we are to not establish a wellness clinic, that when there are the needs for those supports, that they won't be there. If you could provide a comment on that and how we could balance that. And I fully understand that the emergency is at the front line, not the back end.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll be honest, Councillor, I don't know that any of us have received a really detailed explanation on what does wellness clinic mean? What do 9 wellness officers in headquarters mean? Nobody's consulted the front line on what the people using the service require. I'll tell you what our perception of wellness officers is. We have a behavioral health unit that was funded by the city, and it's been incredibly effective. That's a clinical psychologist who oversees a team of mental health clinicians who have seen hundreds of our members, who our members rave about. That's a $300,000 a year contract that we just sent to the lowest bidder. We severed ties with our trusted clinical provider, Alpha Clinic. We're transitioning every patient from the person they've built a relationship with to a team that objectively does not meet the same threshold, which is a grave error, and we've reached out to the public service and the CEO and council to attempt to address that. But when it comes, that is your wellness clinic. That is your effective input. The wellness officers that are going upstairs are focused on returning people to work. They are working with WCB, their case managers. They're accommodating people into positions. They're calling our people who are off. They're not clinical psychologists. They're not providing treatment or therapy. They're finding a square hole to fit a round peg. And that's the perception from our membership, and that's the experience we receive from the current staff in that branch. And so if you're interested in providing an effective input, I suggest you would put your money into the BHU.
Okay.
Who
Thank
is
you.
incredibly
The
efficient.
clock, please. Councillor Orlikow moves extension of 5 minutes. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Councillor Duncan, anything further at this time?
So looking at these 9 positions that have been established, would you support, I don't want to put words in your mouth, I'll let you answer, but would you support eliminating them, transferring them over to the front line with Winnipeg Fire exclusively? And with that, then advocating towards having yourself and your members go to the province and address clearly with the medical director on the responsibilities of your members.
Thank you. The response?
Thank you, Councillor. I think I heard 2 questions. I'll do my very best to answer both of them. To the first, I would absolutely unequivocally advocate for cutting all city funding being provided to those wellness positions and putting your money where you will receive the highest level, the highest return on your investment, the most value for the limited dollars we have, and that is in a preventative upstream introduction of more staff to stop our members from getting sick and injured in the first place. If we've got extra money left over when we've followed our recommendations that are decades old and we've gotten a handle on things, please feel free to add in new resources. But for the time being, let's put what we have where it's most needed. So yes, I would be thrilled with the idea of reallocating that funding. To your second question as it relates to the shared health and the province of Manitoba and their funding model, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of the integrated service model we're delivering, yeah, I think we need to take a look at that contract and see what resources are being provided where, because the strain that's placed on City of Winnipeg municipally funded resources has outweighed the city's ability to provide it. We need to bridge that gap. And if we're taking on additional responsibility through provision of a service purchase agreement, we need to ensure that we're meeting our core mandate first. And we would stand side by side with anybody who would advocate for the same.
Okay. Thank you. Next is Councillor Brawadi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. In June of this year, there was a fire in an apartment block in North Kildonan. You were in front of the media at that time saying this is, and the first closest truck was attending to a medical call. At the time, you were in front of the media saying this is proof that we need more firefighters. We need more firefighters. But the reality was the fire truck was tied up there for multiple hours due to the delay in getting an ambulance. Why does your service not go out there and say, hey, we need to fund, the province needs, Manitoba needs to fund the paramedic service properly? As you've even mentioned this morning, the number of absences and the number of shifts missed for all sorts of reasons is 10 times higher on the paramedic side. The idea of a wellness clinic, even though if it is taxpayer, Winnipeg dollars, it should be, provincial dollars, there's one taxpayer at the end of the day, would that not help your members be able to be available on call? It'll help their mental injury claims because they're not dealing with calls that are not necessarily in their purview. I mean, primary fire paramedics are great to be able to respond to a fire, to a heart attack, to a stroke, a patch. Like, if I get stabbed walking to the parkade, having a firefighter there in moments with a patch, tremendous service, and I think a great story about our model. But again, you were complaining that we need more firefighters, but again, to talk about square pegs and round holes, don't you think that the bigger challenge we face as a city is our paramedic service?
Thank you for the question. The response?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll try and do better. I don't mean to complain. I'm reiterating your facts, your evidence, your data that focus on the service delivery that you're responsible for. That is the fire department. The province is responsible for healthcare delivery. The province is responsible for ambulance funding, and that contract is negotiated. I don't speak for paramedics on the ambulance. I have nothing but respect for my colleagues. We stand shoulder to shoulder with labor, and we advocate for resources for them as well. But it's, you, as council, have agreed to provide this service. We didn't agree to it. We didn't ask for it. We're working in the busiest fire department in Canada because of the service model that you have taken on. And you've taken it on and signed a contract with Shared Health without receiving the resources necessary for us to provide that service. And so even if we eliminated medical calls from the fire department in their entirety, which will never happen, we'll always attend medical calls to some increment, maybe not as paramedics, these recommendations still stand. These recommendations are not based in medical calls or call volumes, they're based in time measures.
Thank you. That concludes our time allotted. Okay, Councillor Wyatt, you'll move 5 minutes. All in favor? Contrary? It's carried.
Am I able to?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. To drive that point home, to give you an example, we have aerial ladder trucks in the city of Winnipeg that do not respond to medical calls. They don't attend. Your master plan, strategic direction, your professional consultants have told you we have less than 50% of the ladder trucks on duty that are required for a city of our size. Okay, you're talking about acknowledging the fact that we're underserviced in fire, but shifting the blame and responsibility to the province and say, well, once you fund more ambulances, this problem will be solved. Well, no, it won't, because I'll say again, if we went back 5 years in a time machine and eliminated 50,000 calls, which will never happen, our call volume increases 10% a year. these recommendations for your municipal fire service would still stand. The City of Calgary hired 150 firefighters to keep up with growing demand of their city. There's their population. They don't have paramedics on fire trucks. Okay, so we're not you know, in any different situation. We're not a different fire department that puts out different fires. We need the fire department to be resourced appropriately, just as the ambulance needs to be resourced appropriately. And we've seen year and year again, increases in funding and increases in ambulance on duty. And they have their own challenges, and I won't speak to those, but not once have we seen any increase in fire staffing. And that's conveniently, we've seen a decrease. We have less trucks on duty today, this year, than we did last year. That is shocking. The North End, Station 6 had 3 fire trucks at this time last year. This year they have 2. The consequence of that is that they're out and other calls are responding and getting their first in. We are shrinking the size of our fire department in an unprecedented demand. So no, hiring more ambulances will not solve the problem of austerity in the fire department.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Brody? Not at this time. Going for a second round of questioning, Councillor Wyatt, followed by Councillor Rollins.
Shocking to hear the North End is down from 3 fire trucks down to 2, and Councillor Eadie votes to shut down debate. So I'd like to ask the question. When I was on Chair of Finance, I got to sit in interesting budget meetings, often behind closed doors in 2013, 2014. And at that time, we had a chief by the name of Reed Douglas, who actually was quite frank sometimes in his responses and answers, which was refreshing. And he answered a question along the lines that in the event that we were not having to respond, as per the contract you mentioned, to EMS calls, what would be the size of the service? And he said, Councillor, I could probably reduce the size of the service anywhere from 700 to 800 firefighters. Now, if that is the extent of the service that we're providing today, why are we giving this massive freebie to Broadway when it comes to funding their shared health services? Because that's really what we're doing, is we're providing, because how many more ambulances, for example, would have to be put on the road if we stopped responding in the way we do today with regards to fire medics and fire service to EMS calls?
Thank you, through the chair. You know, I want to, today is our budget. The service purchase agreement comes up for renewal in 2027, and that would be our opportunity to review the service delivery model we have agreed to here in Winnipeg, the integrated service delivery model that we're all discussing. I don't think that's up for debate today. I don't think we can call the province and impact their budget. I don't think we can break our contract with the province to deliver that service model. I would love the opportunity to come back and provide input into those impacts. But to your question about the size of the fire department, I want to be very clear. You could turn off every medical call today. You could take away 50,000 calls, 60, 70, 80. Our fire department is smaller than it was in the 70s. Our fire department has stayed the same size from the 90s through the 2000s, 2010 through that. Call volume is not the measure in which a fire department is funded. We respond to almost twice the calls of the City of Calgary with half the firefighters, half the fire trucks, et cetera. The measures that are important to a fire department and to your resourcing are the ability of a fire truck to respond from its station to the address and provide a positive outcome, reduce fire and life loss. And in those measures, we are failing. Our fire trucks are not available in station enough of the time. They're spread too thin. You need twice the aerial trucks. So I would counter Chief Douglas's statements at that time. We wouldn't have a fire department if we took away 800 people.
Thank you. That concludes, Mr. Mayor. Move extension. Okay, that concludes. I think we've had plenty of time to ask questions. Who is moving extension? Okay. Councillor Wyatt moves extension for 5 minutes. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that concludes our question period. Thank you for your presentations today.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all your councillors for your hard work. Regardless of the outcome of today's decision, we appreciate everything you do and acknowledge that you have a very challenging role. Happy holidays to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for your professionalism today. We'll now move into the report of the Winnipeg Police Board dated December 5th, 2025. Madam Clerk?
Item number 1, Winnipeg Police Board Preliminary 2026 Budget Update.
Councillor Duncan to introduce that first report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll introduce the report and move adoption of item number 1. Yes, as it's outlined to receive as information.
Any speakers to this item? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Duncan, do you wish to close, or we'll call the question? The report's
Please
before
call
us.
the question. Thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary? That's carried. We'll now move into the report of EPC dated December 16th. Madam Clerk?
Item number 1, Executive Policy Committee Final Recommendation Preliminary 2026 Budget Update.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor? Councillor Brody? Oh, yes. Mr. Mayor, you'll introduce the item, and then we do have an amending motion. 1, moved by Councillor Gilroy, seconded by Councillor Durant-Wood. We'll deal with that in sequence. Mr. Mayor?
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Speaker, is this my opportunity to introduce the motion, motion number 1, and then comment on it as well?
Yes.
For your opening comments, okay? I'll wait to hear the amending motion and then respond to the amending motion in my closing comments. I do want to begin today by thanking all involved in putting this budget together, especially Tracy Graham, our Chief Financial Officer, and her entire team in corporate finance for all the hard work that they have done once again in preparing this year's 2026 balanced budget update. I also want to thank members of our budget working group, our finance chair, Councillor Jeff Waddy, and Councillors Allard and Duncan for all of the countless hours they put in as well. This budget is very much a generational budget. It makes long-term investments that we need to grow, and especially in our capital program. And when we take a look at the increased demand for infrastructure and housing that are reflected within our population growth, the investments in this budget are fully aligned with Council's Strategic Priorities Action Plan, which strengthens our infrastructure, making neighborhoods safer, cleaner, improving public service, and supporting sustainable growth. There's really actually no major surprises, I don't think, in this budget, and I believe that's a good thing. We're focused on stability, on solving problems, and making progress on the projects that have been, in many cases, stalled for years. At a high level, this budget today focuses on 3 key themes. First, generational infrastructure investments, including the largest capital program we've ever delivered at the City of Winnipeg and the largest road renewal plan in our city's history. There's more police, more firefighters, more paramedics, expanded late-night transit service, more support for neighborhood maintenance and safety. And thirdly, we're doing all we can in the midst of all these challenging demands to try to protect affordability for residents. Winnipeg continues to have the lowest municipal property taxes of any major city in Canada, and the property tax increase that is before us today at the time of introducing the budget was the second lowest among major cities so far in the budget cycle this year. Our water and sewer rates are also being held dramatically below the utilities' original proposal. This budget positions Winnipeg for long-term success by supporting housing, supporting economic development, and improving the services that citizens rely upon every day. The centerpiece of this capital budget this year is the North End Water Pollution Control Centre and the city's investment in that critical infrastructure project. It's the most important infrastructure project in Winnipeg's history. Completing Phase 3, or Project 3, of the North End plant is essential to meeting our environmental requirements and standards, supporting continued housing and business development in the coming decades. A few other key highlights from our capital plan: $1.1 billion for regional and local road renewal, the largest road program in Winnipeg has ever undertaken. $239 million to purchase new transit buses and modernize the fleet. $79 million for new and renewed recreation facilities across the city as well. Early design work for Route 90 bridge replacement, a major trade corridor, land acquisition for Chief Peguis Trail extension. All of these investments are key to Winnipeg's future. They support growth, they strengthen trade, and position Winnipeg for long-term economic success. On the operating side, we are adding full-time equivalent resources in a number of departments I mentioned a few moments ago. And we're also extending late-night transit service on 11 fixed routes and 10 on-request service area as well. And though there are increases in the in property taxes proposed here, this budget does maintain the city's affordability, and certainly in comparison to other communities as well. Even with this adjustment that we're making today, as I said, the City of Winnipeg maintains the lowest municipal property taxes of any Canadian city, any major Canadian city, and the lowest municipal revenue per capita. We've also held the combined water and sewer rate changes to 2.8% increase in 2026 and 4.2% in 2027, which is dramatically below what was originally proposed. At the same time, I think it's important to note that we're also improving efficiency across our departments through a new continuous improvement unit led by employees trained in Lean Six Sigma. This unit will help reduce waste, streamline processes, and improve customer service. And I look forward to our discussion on this budget, and I'll look forward to saying more at the time of close. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next is Councillor Gilroy. Your opportunity to speak to the budget and your amending motion 1.
Okay, so just to be clear, I have to speak to the budget as well as?
This is your opportunity to speak to everything. Yeah, the item and your amending motion.
I get to close too, so.
That's right.
Okay, so, all right, and is the closing time 10 minutes? Just so I can, okay. All right, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to refer to the overall budget to my closing. I am going to encourage my councillor colleagues to look at the motion that's in front of you that is adding 20 additional FTEs in 2026 in order to meet the desperate need we have in our fire and paramedic division, and we all have heard. We had a really great length of discussion here about the crisis that we're seeing in Winnipeg and how we really need to increase the amount of staff that we have. We know that we've heard that we are the busiest station, and I think they said in North America, not only in Canada, but in one of, I think it was Station 1 in North America. We've clearly needed more firefighters since 2009, Madam Speaker. So we are really backfilling what we actually really need. We are hearing that overtime hours are substantial, some getting 38 hours of overtime. Like, this is incredible amount of overtime that we are hearing and seeing within the department. We know that we have longer wait times before, Madam Speaker, and this is really critical because with longer wait times, we know that people aren't getting the care that they need right away. Madam Speaker, that concerns me as somebody who's living in the inner city who has seen a lot of these issues play out in her neighborhood. And so I'm very concerned that our wait times are falling behind, Madam Speaker, because we don't have the staff and the equipment complement in order to make sure we're getting there in a timely manner. And I want to talk about that we're seeing that the call volumes are 3 times higher, Madam Speaker, than any other Canadian city. So clearly there is a need for what we are hearing from the firefighters that are coming out and talking about this. And I also want to talk about that we are needing to make sure that we are providing the supports to Winnipeg, Madam Speaker. Overall, we know that we have a crisis here, and these are the frontline staff that are dealing with the crisis. It's not going away anytime soon. Quite frankly, we do not have a plan as a City of Winnipeg to deal with this. And so this is where we're at, Madam Speaker, needing the staff complement in order to make sure that we're managing crisis. I'm also concerned about what I'm hearing about our vacant and derelict buildings and the increase that we're seeing due to these fires that are happening, and particularly, Madam Speaker, in older neighborhoods like mine that clearly need revitalization. Madam Speaker, the request is $700,000 out of the stabilization reserve. This is very little in a large budget that we have, very little amount. And quite frankly, Madam Speaker, when discussing this with the department, it also, we're overspending in the overtime so much that really we would be breaking even, Madam Speaker, by actually adding additional staff. We all know that burnout is real. We feel burnout in our own jobs. Making sure that we are our leaders and making sure that we are caring about our staff, I think is critical. And what we're hearing from the staff is there is burnout, Madam Speaker. And so for very little money, in the big scheme of things, I think we could be lessening the pressures and able to increase the staff complement that we need to deal with the crisis that we're seeing out there and really be able to tackle some of those high volume call volumes that we're having, Madam Speaker. So I urge you, we all know that this is coming out of the stabilization reserve, it's 700,000, but we all know that's where we're providing the funding when it's overtime, Madam Speaker. So it really is, quite a break-even issue, because by the time they hire and everything, that wouldn't get started till well into April of 2026. So it's not a huge cost, Madam Speaker, but it sends a clear message to the staff that we support them. It also puts the services that we need right now feet on the ground, Madam Speaker. So I urge you all to make sure that you add that as part of this budget, and hope that you're hearing what Winnipeggers are saying in terms of they want to make sure that we have the fire and paramedic service complement. And this is something that we've needed for a long time, and even this amount doesn't deal with the amount that we need, but it's a start, Madam Speaker. It's providing a start. So I hope that you support amending this budget to include that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Berwadi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's my pleasure to rise here today to speak to the 2026 budget update. This is the third year of our multi-year budget. It's very consistent with what we as a council came together for in our first couple months of office. We sat down and we came up with our strategic priorities action plan. I remember that exercise. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of discussion, a universal realization that we all wanted trees in our election platforms, the one most consistent item, but also responsibility and the recognition that we all care about Winnipeg and want to move Winnipeg forward going forward. This budget returns to a 3.5% property tax increase. We recognize right now that cost of living is a top-of-mind issue for Winnipeggers. People go, why are you raising property taxes? Well, the cost of everything has gone up. The other levels of government have natural increases that are built into the way they function. The price of a pair of jeans goes up. Province gets 7% on the incremental amount. The federal government gets 5%. Salaries go up. They get automatic increases. For us, the cost of a fire engine, the cost of a transit bus, salaries, they're all going up. And unfortunately, the hard reality is the only way we really have to capture those additional costs is through a property tax increase. 3.5% is still among some of the lowest in Canada, and if you look over a period of years, some of our property tax increases are among the lowest in Canada, and we do our best to try and hold the line on those costs. We're also making massive investments. Winnipeggers tell us, roads, roads, roads. Finally, after many years of investments, our arterial roadways are starting to show improvement. We're getting into some of the worst local neighborhood roads. We're making investments in active transportation. We made our biggest change to our transit network in a generation. And we didn't get everything exactly right, but we're making additional investments to build a transit system for Winnipeg's future, not its past. Winnipeg used to be all hub and spoke, where everybody came to the downtown and everybody left to go out to the suburbs. We now have employment throughout the city. We now have a grid transit system that recognizes that. Is it perfect? Is it an improvement for absolutely everybody? No. And I said, long before the transit system was rolled out, that for the 10% of people that the system could be worse for, even if we got everything perfect, they're going to be really mad. Those people who take one bus to get from A to B and the previous system worked perfectly, it was, change wasn't good. But our old system wasn't perfect either. So the new system is a huge step in the right direction. I do want to take a few moments to thank some folks. The Budget Working Group for putting in the time, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Allard. Meetings, we had spent a lot of time working with our public service, asking a lot of questions and getting answers. I'd like to thank our CFO, Tracy Graham, our new CAO. He started end of July, beginning of August. My understanding is on day 2, he was being pulled into budget meetings already. So our deputy CAOs, our finance team, led by Lisa Pablo, Jody and Tammy, the mayor's office. We had Destiny Watt and Brian Kelsey plugged into the budget process throughout. All of our department directors and their controllers and finance managers. The turnaround times when we had questions, we got answers very quickly. It's always encouraging to see how well the system works when Lisa puts down the hammer. I'd like to thank the mayor and my executive policy committee colleagues. Again, as per the Winnipeg Charter, it's actually EPC that presents a budget. So the EPC was, of course, involved in the process. And finally, Kyle from my office and Brenda from Tracy's office for making all the coordination and all the logistics of our meetings and everything happen. So going back to our budget, our capital budget is $1.2 billion for 2026, and our multi-year 6-year capital is $3.8 billion. We are finally making an investment in NUPIC. Sewage is not exciting. It's not sexy. Cutting a ribbon in front of a sewage treatment plant for a politician is not the most exciting thing in the world, believe it or not. Maybe for Brian Mays, but for everybody else, sewage treatment plants are not the most exciting thing in the world. Maybe we should name it after Brian Mays in the end.
No, thanks.
Oh!
He doesn't want that.
That was fast.
The point being, but we need it. Originally, it was an environmental project. We needed to upgrade to modern environmental standards to ensure that we're being responsible stewards of our rivers and lakes, like Winnipeg, one of the largest natural freshwater bodies in North America after the Great Lakes. But also now for capacity. Winnipeg is growing. 85,000 new people in the last handful of years. And if we don't do something about it right now, we're gonna have to say no. No to new business. We're gonna have to say no to new homes. Again, Winnipeg has so much opportunity. We continue to grow, and if we don't make this investment now, we're gonna have to say no going forward. I appreciate water and sewer bills are hitting hard right now, and my household included. So we do need to. I'm happy we found a way to flatten the increases that were potentially required, but we do need to continue working with the provincial and federal government to ensure the third and final phase of the NUPIC project is funded. We've held the line on business taxes, the increment to water and sewer rates and the solid waste fee are within reasonable amounts. And the 911 fee is dead, so we've had to make adjustments based on that. Transit fares are up a dime, and we continue to offer the 50% wind pass for Winnipeggers that need it most. And one of the biggest, complaints I hear from folks is the idea that, we are taking water and sewer revenue and funneling it into general revenue. We've actually decreased it this year effectively from 11% to 10%, frozen it at previous year's levels. And as per council's motion from earlier this year, eventually the plan is to phase that particular practice out. So again, I think this is a responsible budget. I believe it's a balanced budget. Finally, when it comes to our increase to our fire service in particular, 10 per year is not nothing. The real issue, I think, at the end of the day, I believe, is so much of, and I think Councillor Wyde was even getting to the point, so much of the time spent by our firefighters is related to non-fires and non-first on-scene medical calls. I think if we were able to find a way to redouble that effort, that would help. The mayor's talking about a 4th 911 service where people with mental distress calls will be dealt with by a social worker, maybe a cop, depending on the exact circumstances, in a sedan rather than a fire truck. Most firefighters are not properly trained to deal with mental health crises. That's not their job. It's changed over the years, and they're dealing with more and more people that are in levels of distress. but that's not what they're best suited for. We need to ensure that the province is properly funding our paramedic service. I think there were complaints that our wellness clinic is not the, Madam Speaker, if I get a 2-minute extension from somebody?
So moved.
Thank you.
Mr. Rollins moves 2-minute extension. All in favor? Contrary, carried.
Our wellness clinic is important. It was identified by the fire union that missed hours at the paramedic service is 10 times what it is at fire. This service is going to be based out of corporate HR. The idea is that it'll help our employees that have a responsibility to ensure they have what they need to be healthy and to eventually get back to work. That's going to be, I think, a massively important service. And perhaps, again, I think the bigger challenge appears to be right now on the paramedic side than fire. So again, I think this is a balanced approach and a balanced budget. And again, things that we've pushed off, things like snow clearing. We increased the budget again finally this year. It was a multi-year piece. Hopefully we don't see a blizzard overnight, and I'm dreaming of a brown Christmas, I think is my favorite Christmas carol right now. But again, I thank everybody for their time, and I encourage you to vote for this budget and not the amendment.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Rollins.
Madam Speaker, I want to first stand and recognize and congratulate Mr. Mayor and the Budget Working Group, and in particular my colleague, Councillor Browati, who's been Chair of Finance for 4 years. When you have multi-year budgets, Madam Speaker, you can look back and go, okay, here's some significant piece of work in the term done, and it's important, I think, to mark that milestone and to be clear that coming out of this term, those of us on council that were here last term too, we know that we had the bird's eye view, the 30,000-foot view of Newpick sitting on a premier's desk and going no further. So the congratulatory statements with respect to having a clear vision of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and having a semblance of logic around water and waste with all three governments working in lockstep, arguably in addition with several Indigenous governments that have the view of building in this city, a continued view of building this city along with us. It's a moment, and it's a moment that we should, in fact, all gather this term. Maybe the only council that thinks it's a moment to cut a ribbon or at least mark the milestone around Newpick. If we do nothing else together, I think that should be a moment where together we all stand proud of the council and stand before Newpick and the future growth of the city. We are a growing city. And it's that I jump off from, because while it is a balanced budget, I don't think it is a responsible budget. And I think the evidence, Madam Speaker, that it isn't actually manifested just moments ago when we had 3/4 of a budget working group, 2/3 of a budget working group. You can tease me later for that misstep. Stand up and really fundamentally ask the question of the front line, does this budget work for you? And the answer was no. And whether it is a budget that really does build off a major break that we saw last budget of the trajectory that we set for Winnipeggers in the multi-year, which did represent one of the only consultations with all of government here, which really did represent the only consultations with Winnipeg that were deep and meaningful this term. And when you saw that break, you saw a few things unravel, particularly in the front line. And this year, we saw the results of that, and another clear example of where this budget likely goes wrong is that we still have hours and hours of work to do in water and waste. Why? Because we held a utility outside of budget and we raised taxes, not the 3.5% we had committed to in the multi-year, but all the way up to almost 6%, Madam Speaker, which meant Winnipeggers right now are still waiting either for emails that are taking weeks and weeks to get back to, or on up to 3 hours of wait times just to pay a bill, just to pay their water and waste bill. And councillors are still hearing about that, and we don't know if the 3 FTEs in this budget will actually be able to affect change there when they go into what is going to happen next year when this budget passes, which is increased bills again. And so, Madam Speaker, we do know, though, that those FTEs don't even make the grade with respect to what water and waste loses, what their absolute churn is. They oftentimes are down 4 to 5 staff. So what will be the difference with adding 3 staff? We've had motion after motion go through committees that has just been received as information, whether at the Standing Policy Committee on Protection regarding fire, whether at the Standing Policy Committee of Water and Waste regarding these exact FTEs. Another example, public safety is a very important chunk of work that everyone in Winnipeg expects us to be doing. Whether it's the firefighters who are on the front line saying, Council, please make a substantive difference here. Get us more than what is our vacancy rate. Get us more positions. Or it is the last minute motion on public safety that EPC did. Today just demonstrates that it's perhaps another government that this council and this EPC seems more interested in. No greater statement than a public safety motion, which frankly we should have responded to because we were told Winnipeggers that was their #1 issue still, right? Homelessness, public safety, this is their #1 issues. And here today, we have a finance chair asking the firefighters if it's some other government's problem, i.e., Manitoba government, whether it's some other government's idea, i.e. the wellness clinic, or it's some other government's 2024 National Public Safety Plan, the budget coming out of EPC, where we're just applying for a grant. This doesn't need to be in budget. We could do it tomorrow. But we needed, what, a public safety announcement, Madam Speaker? We do. But what Winnipeggers want is us to do our homework here. They do want to see collaboration amongst and between governments, but they want to see city work done at City Council. And right now it looks like some other government's leading that discussion. We have homework to do. And it's not getting done here by just applying for a grant so that folks can coordinate. It's important work, but it should be outside of budget or in addition to. It doesn't respond to what Winnipeggers needs. It's not the practical, it's not the things to do to keep it simple. Savings. The savings group, I'm glad they saved the one thing. I'm glad they cut the nonsensical 911 fees that falsified the view of budget in terms of our revenue. But you heard Lauren Remillard say, are those P&D positions and permits going to make a difference? You heard the firefighters say, those positions in the wellness, you didn't even ask us about it. What? How can we stand here and say that we care about the front line, which I don't believe we're quite caring for the front line when we're not talking to the people we think it's going to impact most. Oh. Anyways, Madam Speaker, I'll keep it short. You get my point.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Mays.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will be supporting the amendment, and I'll be supporting the budget. I want to leave my comments about the amendment till the extension, though, which I will almost certainly need, knowing my past record, which I do support. And I want to thank Councillors Gilroy and Durand-Wood for moving that forward. On the budget as a whole, I would like to thank the staff for working with me as I have in previous years. The trouble was, we need to do better on the process. EPC needs to do better. There was no role here for anyone outside of EPC or the budget working group, to the point of asking at a council seminar, will we be asked for our input? Answer, no. We're going to ask all the departments, not just the big ones, but the small ones too. There's almost no one who didn't have a role in this after the thank yous, except people who weren't on EPC or the budget working group. Do better would be my request. We didn't even have the usual offer of, well, we'll come out to your ward and do a presentation. That seems to have been forgotten. I've had Councillor Brawadi come out, to his credit. I had Councillor Fielding come out. I had Councillor Wyatt come out. I had Councillor Gillingham come out to my ward over the years. I'm told by, well, frankly, people on staff and perhaps the mayor's office, well, you had your chance in the 4-year. Well, maybe that should have been made more clear in the 4-year budget, because people in the public are expecting all of us to have input into a budget. They're expecting all of us to vote on a budget. If you're told, well, your chance for input was in that 4 years, sorry, we forgot to maybe make that clear. Certainly when we did the previous 4-year budget, there was chance for input in 2021 and 2022. We got the River East running track in 2022 with Councillor Brawadi's cooperation. So this certainly seems to have been a change in process, and frankly not for the better. So I would hope, I'm glad the CAO was dragged in on his second day. I envy him. I'm glad he was there. I wish all of us had had that opportunity, though. So I do think this process needs serious review, and I'll come back to the 4-year budget in a moment. Also, there will be a ferocious council meeting, I anticipate, in January once the grants announcements are made. We used to have them in front of us. We voted on them. It was part of this process. Council voted to change that, not with my support. Council voted to change that, so we're going to have a fairly public and perhaps contentious debate over grants and people trying to recover what they had lost. That's coming in January, I anticipate. 2 more items from the budget that I did want to highlight. And I have mixed emotions about the budget. I'm glad we're putting more money into recreational services. Yet another $2.8 million into the St. James Civic Centre, kicking us now over $30 million into the St. James Civic Centre. It is, of course, an ISIP project, as is which I voted for. I voted for the one in Councillor Luke's ward as well. But surely we can be trying to extend our recreation dollars a little more into other areas of growth, like your own. Madam Speaker, you now have the 2nd biggest ward by population. Like my own, I have the 3rd biggest. Keep hearing how Waverly West is the size of Brandon. Well, Sage Creek and Bonavista are the size of Portage. Let's put some money in and reflect that. Let's put some money into Councillor Santos's long sought-after gymnasium up there in, it's not the Maples, it's the other one. Thank you, Tyndall Park. So pleased to see us investing in St. James, but let's try and invest in some other areas as well. As chair of the Climate Action Committee, I did want to comment on, there is a newly introduced initiative here, $163,000 for building emission reductions. It's something. The building emission reduction strategy called for $38 million, so pretty quick math, we're at less than 0.5%, but at least it's something. I will say there's a lot of backslapping about the Strategic Priorities Action Plan. One of the things in there, one of the 3, and I've confirmed this with Mr. Hildebrand, one of the 3 things we did nothing on was the idea of a green utility to build on these sorts of investments. The mayor, to his credit, in his platform talked about how other cities were putting in 8 or 9-figure investments in retrofits. Houston saved 31% and repaying a U.S. $23 million investment in 12 years. We're beating the hell out of that because our things are paying for itself in 3 years, according to the math we're presented. We're saving enough that these investments are going to pay back in 3 years, not 12. So lots of things in the strategic plan have been acted on. This isn't one of them. So I would hope to get more action going on the building retrofits. I think that's good climate change. It's frankly remarkably good math if we're making our investments back in just 3 years. So I've talked to Councillor Brawadi about this, and he's aware of the math. And the investments are accounted for. We can't reinvest the savings. But in future years, we should certainly be doing more than $163,000, I would suggest. And I'm still waiting for some initiative on this outside funding that was going to come from Infrastructure Bank, et cetera. But turning to the more positive aspects of the budget, the roads budget is actually down a bit, but it's up over what we estimated it would be, and in future years, it's roughly about what we predicted, even though there's a huge drop in provincial funding, I think, starting in 2028. So some good work there by Councillor Brawadi, keeping us to about where we projected over the roads and the percentages. The exception would be my concern about you fight for these things in the four-year budget. You fight to get in more money for the pulver mixer, the gravel lane thing. You do, to Ms. Pablo's credit, you do get these things in, and then you're told by the staff, yeah, we're just not going to spend that. Well, then play it out. Play it out in public. Play it out with me. Let's have a fight about it in public. You can't just opt out of the budget. If you can opt out of the capital budget, then why do we have this process at all? It's serving no purpose. You have to have some integrity, some belief that the capital budget matters. So I'll be meeting with the CAO and the CFO about this matter, but you can't say to people, you only have one shot in the four-year budget, and also if you get something in, we got 3 years to take it out, and you have nothing you can do about it. In fact, we're not even going to take it out publicly. So very alarming for those of us, like Councillor Allard and myself, who have a lot of these gravel lanes. I would also point out one of the other items we've done nothing on in the Strategic Priorities Action Plan is the one item we put in about gravel lanes. So let's do better. Look forward to meeting with the CAO and the CFO on that item. Communities funding is increased for each councillor. Thank you to the mayor. That is certainly keeping a campaign pledge of his, so I appreciate that. The PrEP money is reinstalled. That's a campaign pledge. Appreciate that. Glad to see that money going to the Maples community group, solely because that way when Councillor Dobson and I appear next month seeking to move some old capital money to the St. James School Division for running track, none of you can say, well, we don't do that. We don't move money out of the capital over into operating. Well, thank you to the Maples group, because we certainly are. But that's for next month when Councillor Dobson and I come forward. Third thing I've appreciated, there are no reductions here. I'd feared the $5 million I fought for the rec center would be taken out. It hasn't been. It isn't like Councillor Wyatt got $100 million more for East of Red, or Councillor Santos got the Tyndall Park gym, so I appreciate that. That was an even-handed approach to these rec funding things. I didn't get badly treated there, so I appreciate that. Two things, and then I'll switch gears into firefighters. Councillor Brawadi's right. The main thing here is Newpick. It wasn't in the budget last year. He and I argued about that. There's now a capital page for Newpick Phase 3. That's a huge investment. I'm pleasantly surprised we even got that this term of office. So I want to thank the mayor and Councillor Brawadi for putting that in. I need a few minutes.
Councillor Santos moves extension of 2 minutes. All in favor? Contrary, carried.
The other positive aspect here, it's small. Many people wouldn't notice it. I noticed it. The indexing of the CSO funding. So we're going it alone. We're going to get done by the provincial deadline. What we need to do is index it, though. So if you look, it's going 30, 31, 32, 33. So I want to thank the director for making sure that happened, and thank Councillor Brawadi. It seems small. It is an important issue, and it certainly has mattered to me. So I will be supporting the budget, but I do want to turn, with the time I have left, to the firefighters issue. That was quite a moving presentation, actually, from the two speakers. And you have the person who's in the front line saying, I don't want the overtime. You're giving too much of it. Hire more people. Hire more people. Of course, sometimes I have to take sick days because you're burning us out with the overtime, because we're seeing these horrific scenes of crime and injury. And I have to say, I have some real sympathy for that. So it's a relatively minor, perhaps it doesn't even satisfy the UFFW, but it's a responsible, relatively minor move. We're going to say this budget projects funds 10 in this year, starting April 1st, and then 10 in each of the next 3 years, but you don't have to fund that. That's a future thing. All this says is move 10 into this year. So now we're going to have 20. They're going to start April 1st, so it's a little confusing. So you don't have to pay for 10 more FTEs. You only have to pay for 7.5 FTEs. So it's only $700,000 out of a reserve that is listed in this budget at 15.2. So it's not emptying the reserve. It's a responsible move. It gets more firefighters going. You might say, well, but then you have to pay for them in future years. Well, this budget envisages that. This budget envisages adding more in 27. So the net cost here, seriously, is only $700,000 out of a reserve. Councillor Chambers asked good questions about, aren't these a lot of leaves due to mental health? I'll wrap up, Madam Speaker, just by saying I think it's a responsible thing to do, that the service has changed in its character. The needs of the service have changed, so I thank the two councillors for the amendment. I'll certainly be supportive. It's a relatively minor cost increase to send a pretty powerful message, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was actually fairly moved by the presentation by Adriana Hobbs, who talked about it's not the same service as it was 10 years ago. You know, as the former chair of the Winnipeg Police Board, the WPS has indicated their #1 calls for service was wellness checks. Meth has been a game changer. Province has indicated that their intent is to establish a supervised consumption site, and have also put forward legislation to hold an individual for 72 hours. Not certain if WFPS or UFFW were consulted, and I'm also not sure what impact it will have on frontline delivery of service, whether these calls will start to be reduced. Council itself has seen an impact on meth right here on our front steps with the administering of Narcan to an overdosed individual. This budget puts forth measures to mitigate some of the concerns that were raised today. The addressing of vacant and derelict buildings is one thing. The wellness officers that will be hired to assist in, and that's why I asked that question about accommodations and trying to find an idea of how many are experiencing physical injuries while on the job, and it was presented to us, as well as those that are impacted by what they see on a daily basis. And, you know, the daily basis is the reality of their work. You know, seeing children that have been abused and injured, accidents that they attend to, fires that they attend to, it all has an impact on their mental health and well-being. You know, we talked about 10 positions per year for the next 4 years, with a totality of 40 positions. So the question begs is whether the totality of all of the measures that are being put in place are enough to address the needs of both UFFW, WFPS, and ultimately the citizens of Winnipeg. Again, you know, the individual, Adriana, had indicated that it is not the same service as it was 10 years ago. And she's absolutely right. And again, my experience in terms of, you know, Winnipeg Police Service and their calls for service, it does bear it out. So as council, we have to look hard at the request before us, look at the needs of the citizens, and firefighters are citizens as well. They have families, and you know, we have to make sure that all of our citizens have access to you know, what they need to do their jobs. You know, it was talked about that you know, hiring new firefighters could come out of that overtime budget. You know, I sit on with Councillor Orlico on our emergency measures coordination committee, and we saw this year just the devastating wildfires, you know, once in 100 years type of wildfires, the largest evacuation in Manitoba's history. And the work that was done to ensure that not only citizens of Winnipeg who were impacted, but citizens of Manitoba in the northern areas. And I'm certain that they're, you know, and probably speaking out of school here, but I'm certain that there were firefighters from Winnipeg that volunteered their time to go up north and assist in this provincial effort. So again, it's a tough decision to make today with respect to what is being requested, what has been proposed, and I do want to thank the Budget Working Group for their hard work over these last few months, as well as Finance, Tracy Graham and her team, the CAO, who was immediately put into action in terms of the budget process. But these are tough decisions that we have to make as a council. It's about our future as a city going forward, the safety of our citizens going forward, which is, you know, my time and tenure on the Winnipeg Police Board was all part and parcel of that, how we make our city safer. So again, a tough question that we have before us here today, and I'm hoping it will be the right answer. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Councillor Orlico.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Was I going to speak today? I wrestled with this all week. If the Budget Working Group or the EPC have no desire to speak to me about the budget, why should I speak to them? Last year I came to the Budget Working Group and I came to EPC with funded ideas. Did I get a thank you? No, I got trashed by the mayor in the paper. There were ideas I had. I needed to think the ideas that we have to fund them, and we have to have ways of funding them. I don't have to always agree with the mayor or EPC, but I brought them forward. At least I tried. And then what did I get? Nothing. I get a slam in the paper. So what am I doing this year? This year I'm going, okay, I'm going to talk to Councillor Boati when he comes to talk to me about where I have some problems with the budget and overall fiscal stability, fiscal situation of the city. Never happened. Not once. So again, why am I even going to vote for the budget when you don't have the courage or even the honesty to come talk to me about it? I don't know, because you worked really hard on it by yourselves in your little room in the back room somewhere, I guess. I'm sure you did work very hard. But again, this is council as a whole. This is our only moment really to speak to this. So you're on a bad foot already to start off with, for me to even support it. However, as we all know in every budget, there's some good things in here. We know there's some good things in here. They've pieced together, they've used some new budgeting kind of ideas, like, for example, we're not going to give 2% to roads, we'll give 1% to roads, and then we're going to use debt for an ongoing program into roads. Okay, well, that's new. Again, it's capital, you're right, but it's an ongoing program, so I know when Councillor Wyatt and I did the motion way back when, it was 2% of property taxes, not 2% of property taxes, but maybe you can use debt too, because the problem with that is it has to get backfilled. We have a number of one-time projects again in operating, where I'm not sure how we're going to fund the future. We keep talking about the glories of Winnipeg's growth trajectory. We can't afford growth, people. We can't. We talked about an impact fee, denied quite strongly by the mayor. We talked about just keeping the development fees that we had already for permits in abeyance, not a new fee, denied. So we're not bringing any new revenues in. Oh, sorry, we are bringing new revenues in on strictly to the poorest people in Winnipeg. Right? What I mean by that is these flat fees, where we're doing like the recycling fee is going to be brutal. You may be very happy that we got the fee raised down for the new pick. That's if we get to 2/3. And why are we only asking for us to pay 1/3? We get property tax out of this. We don't get nearly the benefit the other groups get. We should be doing 25% max on the city side, in my opinion. Maybe we should stop this program until we get the funding that we need. You know, maybe we don't need to grow all the time. Maybe we let the other municipalities around us try to suffer through increasing their roads, increasing their police budgets, increasing their fire budgets, and all the things that we have to do right now, but we just can't afford it. And I'm culpable. I am culpable. I'm not blaming anybody here, but I'm on my last budget, probably, and thinking of all the things I've done here in council. I love the trees. I think the roads were very necessary. That's what people wanted. There are items every year. But right now, what I see is happening in this budget by this no more revenue. We're going to celebrate the fact that we're cheap. Affordability, we'll call it. Affordability crisis. If I hear one more crisis, I'm going to lose it. We're going from crisis to crisis to crisis, and you will keep going from crisis to crisis. We have the fire crisis this year, forest fire. That's not going to stop. We're having climate change problems. We're having a big fallout from mental health issues from COVID. They're not getting addressed. That's going to keep spiraling, and we don't have any new revenues to deal with it. Did we do any shared use service agreements with other municipalities? I don't think so. I never heard about it. Maybe one group somewhere in the back room is doing it somewhere, they're telling us. I haven't heard about it. Have we talked about a whole bunch of things? Again, how are we going to raise revenue? We need more revenue, or we're going to do dramatic budgetary cuts. We can't keep limping along like this. The cupboards are bare. And again, I'm saying this not to belittle anybody, but I can't leave my job right now saying the finance of the city of Winnipeg is doing better. It is not doing better. It is doing much worse. When we first got here, we lowered down the debt rate, so our servicing costs collapsed down because we were spending so much money in servicing costs. Now we're going right back there again, massively. Because you know what's going to happen with Chief Peguis, now that we've taxed out our thing, there'll be in 365 days, there'll be a report coming back saying if you want to fund these mega projects, intergenerational projects, you're going to have to massively increase your debt. So we're going right back again, like the political wheel that life is. It goes around and around and around. We talk about growth can pay for growth. We talked about that with Chief Peguis. We'll do these 2 new precincts. They can take all their tax revenue and they'll help pay for Chief Peguis. That's fine if they never leave their site, if they never leave their neighborhood or don't need any fire or ambulance. That'd be fine. But that's not how the game works. That means the rest of the city will have to fund that for them because all their tax revenue to make that number work is going to go there. So do I think that was a good idea? Absolutely not. So while I understand that we have this 4-year budget cycle and the strategic action plan, stickies on a wall don't make an action plan. They don't. I was worried when we were there. You saw my hesitation to even agreeing to most of this stuff, but again, teamwork is teamwork. Again, it was stickies on a wall. And that's really what it was. And now that's being used mostly political to say, well, you voted for that in this strategic action plan. Well, I voted for 1,000 other things because there's 1,000 stickies on that wall. And if you go by the CAO's office in that administration building, you'll see all those stickies still on the wall. They have a whole new, they brought them all home. So again, we as a council have to come together. We have to figure out a way through this fact. The basic fact is we have increasing costs, we have increasing debt, and we have no revenue to be able to manage this. And the cupboards are bare. The maneuvering of, well, we didn't make this cost, so we're going to move it on to the next year, but it's not really a debt. Okay, that's an interesting one. But again, I thanked the CFO. She explained it to me. Didn't have to agree with her. But again, it was just a liability for next year, not a debt. Well, again, those are community getting bigger every time. So again, I see, for me as a Winnipegger, for all Winnipeggers, that where we're going, I don't see a way out. And that's why I'm stressed. I don't see how we're going to do this, keep going this path. We can't. We have to have the courage together, and hopefully the next 4-year budget, it won't be just stickies on a wall. It'll be saying we have to figure out a way to get this zipper. Remember the zipper for some of us? Well, the zipper is wide open now. On the Bowman years, we collapsed the zipper a fair bit. Now the zipper, as we had our presentation, is massively wide open. Well, that's going to really hurt people later on. Again, without any revenue to try to close a zipper, it has to be service cuts. So I don't know what the answer is. I wish I could be a part of that decision and that process, but this year laid me to sadness because we're not only are they not engaged, they're engaging the rest of council even less. So if you want to do bold things, you want to really try to address this, it's going to take council as a whole to do this. Not 3 budget people, 2 on IPC, 1's not EPC. It's going to take all of council to work together, and not on stickies, on actual numbers, on how we're going to do this, with timelines, like Mr. Lamariard said. We need to have quantified timelines how to get this done. Again, I know it's election year. I know this budget actually is not the worst that it could be, but it actually could be a lot better if we had the courage to be able to do some things we have to do. So I wish you all the best. I'm going to listen to everybody today and maybe get some replies back. It'll make me feel a little bit more better. But again, I'm very, very concerned about the future of Winnipeg's finances, and I don't see us making any progress forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing the hour, we're going to now recess and reconvene at 1:15. 1:15. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to reconvene our council meeting of December 17th, 2026. We're currently debating the capital and operating budget. Our next speaker is Councillor Santos.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to begin by thanking the Budget Working Group and the Public Service for their continued efforts. Each year, they are tasked with managing significant and ongoing operating cost pressures, finding efficiencies, and advancing service improvements, all the while meeting public expectations for stronger customer service and keeping the property tax increase at 3.5%. That is not easy work, and it deserves recognition, and so thank you for that again. This year's budget reflects significant capital investments, particularly in areas where Winnipeggers have been calling for many years. Most notably, we are investing $137 million in transit and $12.23 million in active transportation, the highest levels of investment we've seen over a decade. These investments are critical to improving quality of life, mobility, safety, and reliability across our city, and to ensuring our transportation network meets both current and future needs. As Chair of Community Services, I'm also encouraged to see continued investments across this portfolio, areas that Winnipeggers are deeply connected to and often feel most strongly about. The budget includes continued progress towards the new Northwest Library, Phase 2 of the St. James Civic Centre, additional funding for GCWCC supporting the volunteers who are the backbone of our neighbourhood programming, targeted safety improvements at Millennium Library, expanding the proactive cleanup of needle debris and weapons program to include 6 more parks, an incremental $5 million investment in urban forestry, and capital improvements to the Animal Services facility addressing long-standing infrastructure needs. These investments demonstrate a budget that seeks balance, recognizing the importance of public safety, infrastructure, recreation, green spaces, and customer service while acknowledging the financial pressures we continue to face. But before I conclude, I want to take the time to speak to an area that continues to place pressure on our operating budget, and that's the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service overtime. I want to begin by acknowledging the firefighters and paramedics who serve our city every day. Their work is demanding, complex, and often carried out under very difficult conditions. Nothing in this discussion diminishes that reality. What we are debating today is not whether public safety matters. It absolutely does. The real question is whether we are willing to adapt our fire paramedic service to today's realities, rather than continuing to rely on models that no longer reflect the complexity of the challenges we face. We know the nature of the calls for service has changed. Mental health crisis, addictions, encampments, and social systemic challenges now make up a significant portion of our calls. These are not issues that can be solved with a one-dimensional approach. To address today's challenges requires more creativity, flexibility, and a multi-pronged response. That is why this budget cannot simply default to adding FTEs in isolation as a primary solution. Since 2014, Council has increased the fire and paramedic operating budget by nearly 68%, more than double the rate of inflation, and adding 135 FTEs. This budget, 2026, is suggesting that we continue that investment by including 40 new FTE positions over the next 4 years. But this investment alone is not enough if we do not also address sustainability. Overtime is no longer being used as an emergency tool. It has become a permanent staffing mechanism. That is not healthy for our members, not effective for our service, and not responsible for our taxpayers, which is why this budget also focuses on wellness and prevention. For the first time, we are establishing a wellness clinic, a dedicated first-of-its-kind clinic focused on firefighters and paramedic health. This work is about ensuring our members are seen, heard, and supported, not simply treated and sent back to work. Approximately 170 FTEs are currently unavailable through workers' compensation, disability, and illness. These are people, not numbers. And if we want a healthy, sustainable workforce, we must invest in getting people well and safely back to work. When I said that mental health isn't a luxury and that firefighters shouldn't have to carry their struggles alone, I mean it. And the Wellness Clinic is one of the ways we are turning that belief into action. Very few employers are taking this kind of proactive, holistic approach, and if successful, this model has the potential to support other frontline city employees as well, including transit drivers and library staff, who face many of the same challenges on the job. A modern employer must recognize that reality. In addition to investing in staffing, wellness, and infrastructure, we're also taking proactive steps to reduce avoidable calls for service, including advancing a Winnipeg Community Crisis Response Service. Many emergency calls involve mental health crises that do not require emergency medical or police intervention, yet they continue to draw firefighters and paramedics away from core responses. Community-led crisis response models have been shown to improve outcomes while reducing strain on emergency service, which is why this work is moving forward. And tomorrow, we will be voting on the report for the vacancy to vitality strategy to address derelict properties and that continue to drive repeat fires and repeat calls. I go back to my original point. Solving today's challenges requires creative and flexible thinking, with staffing, wellness, prevention, and system design working together. As chair, working closely with the new CAO and Chief Schmidt and the mayor, I believe the work we are advancing now will begin to show meaningful impact in the 2026 and beyond. I am committed to staying engaged, understanding the complexities within Winnipeg Fire Paramedics, and ensuring we move towards an outcome that truly supports both public safety and our frontline staff. I just want to end also the amendment that is being put forth by Councillor Gilroy and Councillor Emma Duran-Wood. Thank you so much for that motion, and I will be supporting it. This amendment does reflect some responsibility to support public safety while also being thoughtful stewards of public dollars. It does recognize the very real pressures facing our firefighters and paramedics, as we've heard from our delegates earlier today, while ensuring we respond to measured and sustainable ways. By phasing in additional FTEs, funding the initial impact responsibly, and committing to review outcomes before making further staffing decisions, this amendment does give a bit of a balanced care for our frontline workers and accountability to the residents we serve. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. Next up, Councillor Wyatt, followed by Councillor Allard.
No, Madam Speaker, I was rising to be able to say, can we call the question on the amendment immediately so that we can then go on with discussing the budget as whole? The question can be put. I'm calling the question on the amendment immediately.
Councillor Wyatt, there are other speakers. I'm going to ask the clerk to clarify the request. There are other speakers registered on the list so far. Sure, you can respect that as well. And we're checking that. Thank you. Can we vote on the amendment and then go back to debating? I don't
Section
think so.
35 of the procedure bylaw reads that a motion that the vote now be taken on the previous question shall always be in order and shall take precedence over any other motion and shall be put immediately without debate, except that a councillor may not immediately after speaking move that the vote now be taken.
So it is in order to vote on just the amending motion and then go back to the debate, Mr. Clerk? And there's no required vote of council to do so. Councillor Gilroy?
Do I have an opportunity to still speak even though I don't?
No, let's not let everyone speak.
Agree with what?
And then you can speak.
I'm going to confer with the clerk for one moment.
It's a motion to take the vote. So it's a motion to actually vote on the motion. So you're actually asking whether or not we should actually be voting on this motion now. So it's a motion that the vote now be taken on the previous question. So the motion is to call the question on the amendment. So that's the motion before council. Whether or not we should actually be voting on the amendment. wouldn't necessarily be right on the amendment. First, you're voting to whether or not you're going to be voting on the amendment right away.
All right, I'm going to call the vote on whether we proceed to vote on amending motion right now. No. Councillor Gilroy, your microphone's not on? You're okay.
You stand up.
Sorry. Madam Speaker, we have somebody new as part of council, so I just want to make sure it is clear on what we are voting for. So,
And this request does not come up very often. Mr. Mayor?
Madam Speaker, I've been here quite a while. I'd like to be clear on what is going on
Yes,
as
sure.
well, so thank you.
It is in the procedure bylaw. I think we'd all like to be clear. Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. So the amending motion 1, moved by Councillor Gilroy. Councillor White has requested that we vote on that right now. And the request has been made, but I'll call a vote on that. No,
Just sorry.
no, consideration to vote for the motion.
Thank you. So to be clear,
Okay.
you're calling a question on a vote
To allow us to
as to whether we should
subsequently.
vote on the motion. So this is a
Correct.
vote
That's
about
right.
voting. It's not a vote on the motion
Yes.
right now.
If you think we should stop debate and go to voting on this motion.
Anti-debate. This is the anti-debate motion.
Okay, and I'll call a recorded vote. So if you'd like to. The blizzard's here. Okay, thank you. So I'll call the question on whether you think we should proceed after this vote to move to amending motion 1, to vote on it and to stop all other debate. All in favor? Yes, all in favor of putting the question right away, please rise.
Okay. Councillors Edie, Wyatt,
Those opposed, please rise.
His Worship Mayor Gillingham.
Look in the mirror
Councillors
about that.
Allard, Brawadi, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Durand-Wood, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Orlico, Rollins, Santos, and Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma.
The vote, Madam Speaker, yeas 2, nays 14.
Thank you. The request is denied. Councillor Wyatt, do you wish to use your speaking time? Okay. A little bit of excitement there, but it's done. Councillor Allard.
It's a fascinating place we work in. So on the 2026 budget decision, Mr. Mayor, colleagues, today I vote on the 2026 budget update. This is not just a report, it's a decision about the priorities of our city. As the elected representative for St. Boniface, I take my responsibility as a steward of our community seriously. A budget is a moral document. It is where we codify our priorities. Today, my priority is the safety of our residents and the well-being of those we charge with their protection. In St. Boniface, results come when we work together. Since 2014, we've invested over $10 million in recreation and culture. I brought the Taché Promenade to this table when it was only a concept, and together as a council, we agreed to build it. Today, it is a reality. Thank you, Councillor Mays, for supporting it. This is our record of delivery in St. Boniface. We delivered the new splash pad in Norwood East because I moved the motion and council supported it. We delivered the renewal of the Bonneville Pool and the new Windsor Park Library. And I'm proud to see our first responders operating out of the brand new Windsor Park Fire Hall, a project we prioritize together. Now, I'm moving for the final consent. I hope we can all agree on the proceeding on the reconstruction of the St. Boniface Aquatic Facility. This is the next logical step in a decade of proven investment. À Saint-Boniface, je représente un peuple fier et lucide. Investir dans nos infrastructures n'est pas une dépense, c'est un engagement. Mon vote aujourd'hui est l'exercice de cette volonté populaire. To our firefighters and paramedics, I've heard you. The reality on the ground has evolved, and my vote reflects that change. We discussed the 50,000 calls that pull you away from your core duties. While I remain committed to specialized partnerships to address that volume, I will not leave our halls under-resourced, and so I will be supporting the motion. I'm supporting the motion to bolster our frontline strength. We must support the people who fight the fires. It is a both-and necessity. Both-and is an expression I learned from the mayor. We need the Community Crisis Response Service, and we need a fully manned, personed fire paramedic service. Together, we're voting for total strength. Nos premiers répondants sont au cœur de notre sécurité. Je vote pour renforcer vos effectifs. Nous protégerons ceux qui nous protègent. Merci. On technology, and thank you to the mayor for confiding me on being the council liaison for innovation. I'm focused on the stability of our internal systems. These digital tools are the backbone of city operations. By modernizing our infrastructure, we're ensuring that the City of Winnipeg has a stable, cost-effective foundation to support our staff and our citizens. I support this budget because it honors the needs of St. Boniface while standing firmly behind our first responders. Whether I speak in English or in French, I'm here as the elected voice of my neighborhood, St. Boniface, to ensure this city is run with intelligence and resolve. So thank you to all who have spoken, our public service, the budget working group, the mayor, the administration, the delegations who came today, to my colleague, Councillor Wyatt, who may be listening, to the budget working group team, to the CAO. Thank you all for your commitment. We all got here together, Madam Speaker. With that, I'll be supporting the amended motion. I will be supporting the main budget, and I will not be taking the full 10 minutes that I'm allotted to speak. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Okay, Councillor Eadie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Don't usually write a speech for many things, and I haven't done for this, Madam Speaker, so hopefully I can cover it all off. Well, let me just start with the amending motion. I'll talk about that. I will be supporting it in whole, Madam Speaker, but I do have some concerns that some colleagues wouldn't listen to me and accuse me of certain things which I don't do. And Madam Speaker, I would just like to say that using the fiscal stabilization reserve, a contingency for cases like overtime or whatever, this year we're pulling it out of there, but it's not, that money is not coming out of there every year. So the best way to have done it, and whether people agree with me or not, to be fiscally prudent and do things in a manner that respects the future, essentially it should have been what? I don't think it's 700,000, but whatever that value is, should have been proposed to be apportioned to the property taxes, which is what pays the firefighter and paramedics on fire apparatus. That's what pays for that part of the service. Shared Health pays for the ambulance paramedics and under that contract and so on and so forth, Madam Speaker. So I just wanted to make it clear as to why I had concerns, and being a businessman grad, top graduate of the year, when I talk about, doing things fiscally in an appropriate manner, I'm speaking as somebody who did receive an education and did quite well in the field of even looking at financing and paying for things in budgets, Madam Speaker. Now, on to the budget itself. So the framework for this budget was actually set in the 2022 election, Madam Speaker. And so we've been working with what we have to do, and we have introduced going through, for example, one of the things that I think is great turned out, we have neighborhood action teams, Madam Speaker, under Public Works, dealing with and providing services that we, the city, haven't been able to keep up to, especially with greenfield growth, and we have our old part of the city that we have to take care of. And so 26 looks to add more workers to these neighborhood action teams, and we get great results, and it's a fantastic thing. And so there's other initiatives that have been taken that are continued. Some are increased, Madam Speaker, and I think that that's very important that we continue to do those things. Now, we're having to manage and deal with my colleague from River Heights. It's quite accurate. We really need to be able to deal with revenue, and it isn't great that we have to borrow money all the time. What's really odd, Madam Speaker, when I started in 2010, the city and the property taxes, this city was flush with lots of cash and everything, but it was also a period. It was also a period. The lowest long-term bond rates ever through that part of my term back then. And we were using cash, Madam Speaker. And I'm good with using cash for like buying buses. We're borrowing now to buy buses. Cash is good for that. That was something that was changed back in 1998, actually, with Mr. Bill Clement. And it was a great idea, and it was helping get us out of the debt servicing situation that the city of Winnipeg was in at the time. But, large corporations, what they do is they expand their business when long-term bonds and borrowing rates are down. That's when they leverage dollars to increase their ability to provide a product or a service or whatever, what have you, Madam Speaker. So within this budget, having been made the chair of Water, Waste and Environment, and working with the mayor and working with our CFO and senior management of this city, as well as the people who work for the mayor, we came up with the best way that we can deal with that, and we are trying to move forward with federal and provincial support. What the share is, I don't know, Madam Speaker, but what we did manage to do is, by utilizing that debt, we did lower the water rates, and it's very difficult, and keeping the property tax rate at 3.5 increase, I think that that's, we're managing that to increase it when we have been increasing the water bill. And yeah, this in 26, the rates are only going up about 3%, and then a bit more in 27. But Madam Speaker, there really was a big increase to water rates the previous year, and Winnipeggers are struggling to still pay that. And so this budget is dealing with that. We're moving forward with things that we have to do, Madam Speaker. Capital budgets are there. We are, Madam Speaker, in a difficult time in terms of trying to work with the province. We heard projected $1.6 billion deficit. We're not allowed to run deficits, Mayor, as everybody knows, right? And so we're doing our best to balance the budget, and this budget is balanced. Although, you know, again, I have some concerns. We're having to use the fiscal stabilization reserve, which is really to handle problems, and its balance is kind of low. And I worry about that, Madam Speaker, because that's not good going into the future. We should be finding a way to replenish and get to a level that means when we run into another COVID situation or whatever, that we're able to deal with those huge problems. What else could I say about the budget? You know, I am disappointed in some things in the budget. But, you know, the reality is the reality. Newpick on the capital side is taking up a huge amount. That's on the water rates, but nevertheless, it is all charged to Winnipeggers, and so those are the difficulties. We are continuing our road program. I think that's great, Madam Speaker, because that is one of the biggest issues I still get calls on. We're continuing working with solid waste, that management, talking about the environment. We are moving forward with the purchase of curbside containers to deal with compost pickup, which is environmentally really good, helping out to reduce the effects on climate change. I think that's really important. We won't really get to it till the future, but anyway, I hope everybody votes for this budget. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Emma Durant-Wood.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I want to acknowledge that I only came into this position about 2 weeks before the preliminary budget was released, so my ability to have input was probably already quite limited. But I just want to acknowledge that I've heard from a lot of my council colleagues that many of us did not really have a meaningful opportunity to shape it. That said, I think today we have a good opportunity to make a positive change to the budget with this proposed motion to accelerate the hiring of firefighter FTEs. Over the last couple of weeks, I've tried very hard to understand what the challenges and the need is for the fire and paramedic service. And what I'm hearing is that we have really big societal challenges resulting in an overburdened fire and paramedic service that is getting injured, sick, and burnt out as they carry out their duties to protect us as Winnipeggers. There is a need for better preventative care for these staff so that they don't undergo as much harm. And there is a need to better support members who are off sick so that they can get back to work, which is where I know they want to be. It's also been very clear for a long time that the department needs more staff. So I'm encouraged that through this amending motion, we may be able to show them that we are willing to try to make their work conditions better right away. So I encourage my colleagues to support this motion, especially since it is essentially cost neutral with the funds coming from the FSR, which is where they would be coming from in overtime anyway. Moving on to the budget at large, I want to acknowledge the hard work that went into this budget by the budget savings team and the public service. Given the complex nature of developing a budget of this magnitude and the dire financial situation that the city is in, Councillor Orlikow spoke pretty directly and bluntly about that. There is some good in this budget, in particular the urban forestry budget, wellness clinic for the WFPS, and expansion of the neighborhood action teams, additional resources for needle cleanup, and for unsafe conditions response team. But on the whole, this is a budget that really reflects a city in decline that is just barely scraping by. It has a lot of risk in it. Within the budget documents themselves, there are many warnings of the reality of our situation, Madam Speaker. Page 24, methods used to balance the budget, such as one-time transfers from reserves and asset sales, are nearly exhausted. Page 101, the city's next multi-year budget cycle includes significant tax-supported shortfalls starting at around $150 million in 2028. And the next council to be elected in 2026 will tackle this challenge. This is pretty scary. Ultimately, I would say it's not this particular budget that is problematic. It is a pattern of budgets that continue down the same path, seemingly not acknowledging the structural challenges that have led us to this point. Every dollar we borrow, every new road or pipe that we build comes with a completely predictable cost to the future, whether that's debt repayment or maintenance and replacement costs. Realistically, we have no means of keeping up with these obligations. And by focusing on individual line items within the budget and making each individual annual budget work, we seem to be missing the big picture and missing opportunities to rethink how we build our city and maintain our city and what changes we might need to make to turn this financial ship around. This is a very difficult decision to make on how to vote for the budget, and I'm just going to continue listening to what my colleagues have to say. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Lukes.
Okay. I like to make notes because I have lots to say, but thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll just start with a little bit of, for having been on EPC and then not been on EPC, the irony of some of these statements that I'm hearing about the budget process, the transparency and involvement, is simply not lost on me. I feel like I'm reliving some speeches I gave for 6 years. We had a governance review. Every single person here had the opportunity for input to make change during the governance process on how we do things, how we govern the city, how we have input. Some did, some didn't, but we're here today, and I'll just leave that at that. I want to thank the public service for the work they have done to help put forward a balanced budget. The long hours, the agendas, the sheets, the kind of chuckles and fun that sometimes come out of that. I'm very pleased that the mayor put a budget savings team in place who worked with the public service throughout the year to find savings. I always thought it strange that we just worked hard on it for a period of 2 to 3 months and then didn't. I know this proved to be invaluable in helping to find savings by doing deep inquiries into the departments. I believe the budget is addressing affordability for residents through the tax increase, through ensuring the water and sewer rates are manageable in light of the large investment in the North End treatment plant. I do want to remind people it's easy to forget that we took a $200 million hit on COVID and are still recovering from it, as reflected by the state of the Fiscal Stabilization Reserve. This budget has many positive investments. As Chair of Public Works, record investments in roads. People love their roads. Record investments in active transportation. Actually, I did an analysis on the last 10 years of investments, and this is a record investment. Transit. Now, of course, one of my personal passions, and everyone around council who has supported it, is road safety. I'm pleased to see that the Parking Authority is moving forward with the implementation of a PTP driver and vehicle licensing program so that the Vehicles for Hire ensures that all drivers and vehicles providing for hire transportation in Winnipeg is licensed. That's really important. We have a lot of people who depend on that for their livelihoods. We're investing heavily in frontline services, police, transit safety, and the health of our Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service. I want to acknowledge the strong communication efforts of UFFW. I appreciate your professional communications, the clarifications of information and misinformation on issues that need to be addressed. I know we can come to what I see as a compromise, and I think we have it here in front of us in this motion. Now, it's important that residents of Winnipeg understand the efforts we are doing to control costs. I'm very, very pleased to see the establishment of an Office of Continuous Improvement. Under the oversight from the top, from the CAO, to adopt Lean Six Sigma methodologies with training throughout the bureaucracy. The city employs upwards of 10,000 staff. Much of the service work that the city delivers is repetitive, and with repetitive work, there is an opportunity for optimizing service delivery. In addition, the establishment of an organizational change management team. The team will focus on people and support staff through changes that come with new services, processes, and technology, which we're investing in all. And while all of these and many more are great initiatives that we have in the budget, I'm going to sound like Councillor Orlico now because I told him he stole my speech here, but these efforts are barely enough to keep the books balanced for another year, barely. We are barely staying afloat as costs are rising faster than revenues. Winnipeg's expenses continue to rise at more than 5% annually. Our city relies on property taxes and user fees and transfers from the province to keep up with the basic operating needs and our long-term infrastructure needs and requirements. From all indications, revenues from the province are expected to grow by only 2% in the basket funding, which is morphing sort of into invest as you see fit to an invest as we see fit. That's a whole topic in itself. I've been using this example to share with residents to help them understand the situation Winnipeg is facing, along with cities across Canada. This is a great example that my residents really resonate with. Winnipeg just hosted the 2025 Grey Cup. About $14 million was generated, as estimated by Winnipeg Economic Development and Tourism. So of that $14 million, $8.2 million to the province of Manitoba, $5.6 million to the federal government, PST and GST, $386,000 for the city of Winnipeg, which really was accommodation tax charged by hotels, which doesn't directly end in our budget. So like Councillor Orlikow, I too am really challenged on how we will solve the deficit. For some reason, we've eliminated the zipper here, and we now have the red bar charts on page 101. I don't know, it still looks depressing, it is. So for some, this will be their last budget process. For others who return after the election, the challenge will be to deal with a $150 million deficit in next year's budget. I know there's only one taxpayer, and I completely agree that the allocation of revenue should be reviewed and consideration, funding should be allocated to cities to address their infrastructure needs, more so than it currently is. Every time we build a house, we see additional costs. Every time we build an apartment block, we see additional costs that cities have to absorb. So this is an issue I think each and every one of us needs to be much more active than we are. I strongly feel we should really be having, I'd say, more aggressive dialogue with the province and the federal government, because if we can't meet our basic needs, services will be cut, and ultimately we're going to have to rely more and more on the province to come to the table to help us in this situation, and the federal government. And we're not alone. Cities across Canada are in the same situation. So we've got a lot of good things in the budget. Not everyone's going to be happy, as we know, with the budget. That's the way it is. I will be supporting the budget, but I don't know. It's a real challenge that we have on page 101 going forward. So with that, I'll end my remarks.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Duncan?
It's never a good sign when I have to scroll to the top. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to rise today to speak in support of the budget because it makes responsible, forward-looking investments in our areas of Winnipeg that matter most: frontline services, community safety, recreation, and the long-term infrastructure that our city depends on. This budget includes meaningful investments in frontline staff with a total of 74 new positions across key services I wanted to identify: 18 new police officers, 19 new Winnipeg Fire and Paramedic Service staff, 11 shared health positions, 9 community safety officers, and 17 new neighborhood action team members. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the members of the fire service who strongly advocated for the frontline brothers and sisters out there. We hear you, and your efforts to ensure the safety and capacity of your colleagues are recognized and appreciated. These are the people residents rely on every day to keep our neighborhoods safe, respond to emergencies, and maintain essential city services. Strengthening frontline capacity ensures timely service delivery and supports the staff who are already carrying a heavy workload. The budget also takes a practical and balanced approach to community safety, recognizing that safety is achieved through a coordinated approach that includes enforcement, visibility, prevention, and community supports. These investments help improve safety in our neighborhoods, our public spaces, and in the downtown. I also want to highlight the continued investment in recreation facilities and programs. Recreation is a core service that supports mental and physical health, strengthens opportunities for families to enjoy their community together, and provides a safe and positive space for all. Working with my community of Charleswood, Tuxedo, Westwood, we have made substantial investments into our community centers, our playgrounds, community beautification, road safety, and the most beautiful parks and forests in Winnipeg. I'm committed to continuing to invest in our residents, young and old, so that everyone in our community has access to safe and vibrant spaces. Another important component of this budget is the community fund allocated to ward councillors around this table. This provides unprecedented flexibility to fund projects that make a meaningful difference in your ward, allowing us to respond directly to local priorities and deliver improvements that residents can see and feel. Madam Speaker, this budget also makes historic investment into roadway and active transportation infrastructure. Improving and renewing our roads and pathways is essential to economic growth, public safety, and the daily lives of residents and businesses. These investments will help reduce long-term maintenance costs, improve reliability, and support a growing city. In addition to that, and on the growing city, the continued investment into the North End Water Pollution Control Center is critical for Winnipeg's future. This project ensures regulatory compliance, protects our waterways, and supports substantial growth for generations to come. It is the foundational infrastructure that allows our city to expand responsibly and competitively. It is also, it is always easy to criticize and complain about what has been done or what should be done. What is far more difficult, Madam Speaker, is the work of finding solutions, building consensus, and working together to move our city forward. We may not all agree on every aspect of this budget, but it is important that we continue to work together as a united front in the best interest of Winnipeggers. Finally, I want to thank my fellow councillors for the work they do in their ward each and every day. It is appreciated. To move us forward and face our next challenge, which many of the councillors have pointed out, is for those reasons that I will support this budget strongly and firmly, and I would ask my councillor colleagues to do so as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Any further speakers? Councillor Wyatt?
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I just rise on the tail of Councillor Duncan's comments. I wasn't going to speak actually to the budget, but he inspired me to do so. So I rise, and I want to echo a lot of the concerns expressed by Councillor Orlikow and others in terms of the process. I felt it somewhat frustrating because I know at the beginning when we arrived on council back in 2002, there was an express interest by Mayor EPC that we were going to do things differently in terms of non-members of EPC versus members of EPC. That has not played out to be the case. We see it unfolding even today with regards to an amendment that's been brought forward by Councillor Gilroy, where we're doing an amendment on the fly on something that could have been addressed weeks ago in the standing committees, where we heard these complaints first of all come forward. Not only at the standing committee, then at EPC, where people made very strong presentations, the same ones you heard today, if not stronger, that could have been addressed there. And instead, we have this kind of, I guess, Russian roulette kind of game where we spin the revolver and see if we pull the trigger kind of thing, and whether the bullets in the chamber or not, kind of politics. It's unfortunate, Madam Speaker, that it has to come down to that. It's unfortunate, Madam Speaker, that that has to be the game that's played to be able to make progressive change in the city. I never thought I'd live to see the day where a sitting mayor was on the other side of the United Firefighters. I never thought I'd live to see the day where the city of Winnipeg police officers are going through the same struggles, but they don't have the same style. That's not their style of leadership. They're more of a command and control type of organization. I get it. That's their history. And a lot of people forget that the WPA at one point couldn't exist. They had to operate as the Winnipeg Police Sports Team. That was their political association. They had to hide behind a sports team to be able to legally exist as an association for a long time in their history because of the laws of this land that prevented them to have the very same rights that any other employee association or union would have. And so they approach things differently. However, if you were to hear from them today, we would hear actually very similar stories that are happening to the rank and file of police officers on the front line of Winnipeg. And in some ways, they're seeing things that are even more egregious than you could ever imagine. And it's having a toll on them as well. They are human beings like anybody else. And I think what we heard today from our firefighters is the bare minimum of what we're seeing in the streets. Unfortunately, we know as well that the challenges that we're facing today in the city are not going to be resolved, Madam Speaker. Why? Because in 2019, this council, along with the provincial government and federal government, sponsored a report over a course of a year, an in-depth study where you actually, as a council, secured and involved major leaders in the community when it came to the mental health addiction crisis, and you produced what was called the Illicit Drug Task Force Report, issued in June of 2019. That report, Madam Speaker, sits on a shelf. The recommendations, which if fully implemented, would see a radical change in what's happening in our streets today. It's not happening. And instead, we are, sticking the Band-Aid on the problem, trying to hold the fort together, so to speak, and to maintain our services the best we can with the struggle that they're facing. And today, it sounds like with the support in this chamber for the amendment, I want to thank Councillor Gilroy, Councillor Duran Wood for their motion to amend, to add the firefighting positions. It sounds like there appears to be support for that motion to pass. But it's a shame that it had to kind of come to this on the floor of council. And what's also disappointing, Madam Speaker, is that, if I recall right, and many of you will hear, that after the last general election, the Chair of Finance reached out to all of us. So what are your priorities? And we responded. That was the end of it. There's been no other reach out since. I remember the mayor coming down to my office and saying, I'm going to do things differently. It hasn't been the same. I wish it was. I really wish it was. When we went out to that retreat to Elkhorn, I had real hope. The mayor was so engaged. He let everybody else speak first. He summed up everything. He was a true team leader. And I thought, my God, we've got a different mayor with a different style. And I wanted that to happen. And I still believe in that. I don't want to give up on that. I still believe in the people in this chamber, and I still believe in the mayor, and I still believe that can be done, and I still believe that we can go forward together and unite as a city to face the challenges we face today. We're all in this together. But where I am starting to get concerned is that major initiatives that we know we need to address, and I'm just going to, kind of go over them very quickly. I'd like to thank Councillor Eadie for mentioning the tripling of the water swim rates in the last year that are going to be driving people out of their homes. Now, it's been said that the regulations are the regulations are the regulations, but we now know from dialogue that we've had with our own engineers that our own engineers recommend to the provincial engineers how we should be regulated and via back again. Why? Because that's their plan B, and this is their plan B as engineers, in case they're no longer working with the province, in case they're no longer working with the city. In other words, the regulations have been imposed on us behind the scenes, and if we had any other jurisdiction look at this, especially the type of regulations unfairly coming down to us on what we contribute to the watershed and to that lake, is outrageous in terms of our share of the nutrients and phosphorus going into that lake, number one. Number two, Madam Speaker, and so we don't need to, we can be pushing back on the upgrades being required. We can be bringing down those costs, and we can be passing along. Furthermore, it's my understanding that EPC is elected not to proceed with the solid waste organics. And yet we are still collecting the fee, $100 each paycheck from every homeowner or each quarterly bill against that. But I've heard, I don't know if it's confirmed or not, that the Chair of Finance or members of the committee decided to kill it. Why are we collecting over $100 every quarter then from homeowners for something that we're not going to be rolling out? I'd like to know that answer to that question, and that's still in this budget. I'd like to know why the Arlington Bridge is not being addressed. I'd like to know why the Louise Bridge is not being addressed. We have a strong member of EPC from the North End on the executive committee. 2 members, actually, not being addressed. The Arlington Bridge sits up there in the air, waving probably, because it's almost falling apart. Madam Speaker, we have all these challenges. We have our bus drivers, now probably the most dangerous. Well, it used to be mining in this province, the most dangerous profession. Now it's bus driving, And we talked about what we're going to be getting the surround around shields. Well, I was on the standing committee 2 years ago when we were still talking about the secure shields that were coming. They've been talking about it for ages. Where are they? Why don't we have them in place? And yet, when I asked the questions 2 years ago about the scofflaws walking on the buses, and the comptroller said, well, Councillor, it can't be as high as 10 million. And then 60 days ago or less, the mayor confirmed in the newspaper for all of us that it's approximately $10 million going out the door annually. Thank you very much. We've confirmed it now. Now, that's what it is today. What's it going to be tomorrow? These are costs. And we wonder why the buses have become so unsafe when we allow that rule to be waived. We let all rules be waived, and that's the mentality that's happening out there now. The attitude of entitlement among some, it has to end. Madam Speaker, the biggest concern I have here is we still have a budget where we're shutting down wading pools on kids in the inner city at a time when we got to be reinvesting in recreation. And yet, yes, to Councillor Duncan's point, we also have a budget where we're creating a massive slush fund for councillors to get reelected. $315,000, no less. $200,000 in operating, $115,000 in capital, called the New Communities Fund, for a re-election with very little rules, as he pointed out, compared to what we had for the CIGP, compared to what we had for the prep program, which
Councillor
was
Gilroy
clear
moves
rules
extension
that this
of 2
kind of slush
minutes.
fund
All in
corruption,
favor?
that this kind of slush fund corruption would not exist. Those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, any further speakers on this? Okay, no further speakers, I see. Councillor Gilroy, your opportunity to close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Okay, so I was, okay. Yeah, all right. The drama here is just riveting. Okay, Madam Speaker, I have talked with my councillor colleagues, and Madam Speaker, you yourself, over the lunch hour, and I'm glad to see that so many now are going to support the amending motion, and that hopefully this will be passed. And I think this is a good, strong message to the staff that we heard here today from the fire and paramedics that we do care. We heard them, and we're going to address some of their concerns, and hopefully they will understand that we are committed to them. Madam Speaker, I want to talk a little bit about the budget. I haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. And I want to talk, first of all, I want to thank the staff for their great, tremendous work. I know how much work goes on to doing the budget, and I just want to thank them for all the tremendous work that they've done. But I do want to talk about, I'll start with the positives. There are some positive things that have been added for me, which I want to thank my councillor colleagues for really listening to me on some of these issues that are really critical in my ward, which is increasing the needle pickups in parks. That's a motion I brought forward, and that's something that will be taking place in this budget. I also want to thank the council members for also adding in extra staffing for an unsafe response team for derelict and vacant buildings. That is really, really critical. It will coincide with the work that we heard from the delegates today in terms of our vacant buildings that we just need to get torn down. And I also want to thank the commitment for $20,000 into the Winnipeg Committee for Safety. These are citizen members of our city from all over that are really passionate about safety. And if we're not listening to our own citizens about what they want to see in terms of safety, we are failing as a city. So I just want to thank them for that. And I want to talk about the issues and concerns that I have with the budget. First of all, transit. We have major issues with transit, Madam Speaker. That's all we're hearing about in our emails, in the media. People are really struggling with it. And at the same time, Madam Speaker, we're increasing fares. It just doesn't seem right. The mayor and Councillor Orlico and I got an email today from a mother whose son at 6:30 at night when it was dark was left downtown because the D16 just decided to get canceled. And then the kid was struggling to get home from the downtown. Like, this is a major concern. And so I'm glad we're adding the one staff, but I guess we changed a whole system over in one day, Madam Speaker, with the staff we had. So I'm concerned that one staff, I'd rather see the money go and invest back into the transit system. Let's look at the actual meters we have and the distances between our transit stops, like what we're actually hearing from residents, and deal with the tangible things that we can be changing to make improvements for residents and transit. And just increasing the time, the fee, Madam Speaker, it's just not right. It's not the right time, nor should we be doing it. I also want to talk that our parks are falling behind. We're not advancing in put improvements to our parks. And although we have the community fund can be used for non-city things. And we often get asked to be using that fund for non-city entities. So we really have to make sure that we have a clear, defined budget for our parks. A lot of the times they are saying no to us. And I have a lot of aging infrastructure, and it's just not being renewed, Madam Speaker, at the rate that it should be. We're also losing a lot of our grants. I'm very concerned. Spence Neighborhood, I see that they don't have any funding for this coming year. That really concerns me. Our main library at the Millennium Library is closed on Sundays because, Madam Speaker, we don't have a plan to how to deal with the issues around homelessness, so that's how we're dealing with them. We're closing libraries instead of dealing with the issues, Madam Speaker. Another thing that I'm concerned about is the biggest concern I have is we have heard, Madam Speaker, from residents, from businesses all over the city, that homelessness is our #1 issue. We have heard from the delegates today that are struggling with this issue. And we continue to have a blind eye that this is our problem, Madam Speaker. That this isn't something that we're responsible for, Madam Speaker. Yet we are the government that has to deal with the impacts of it the most, Madam Speaker. We need a tangible, clear plan. And having one-offs where we're finding funding for this and trying to figure out this plan here and this plan there isn't working. We need a tangible plan that's going to look at how we're going to deal with the addiction and mental health crisis that is facing Winnipeg. And so until we have that look, as a council, we're going to really struggle with all the continuing issues that we have. So, Madam Speaker, for example, Sherbrooke Pool is having issues, and how are we going to respond to them? Like, this budget isn't going to have a response to needing more staff there, to making it more safe. So I'm just very concerned that we're not talking about it enough, and we're not coming up with tangible solutions. And that's what I'm looking for, is more tangible solutions. So, Madam Speaker, I am supporting the budget. I want to thank my council colleagues for their work on agreeing with the amendment and getting us this passed. I think this is a win. I think we're at a crisis point. We need the staff out there for fire and paramedics delivering the service that we really, really desperately need. And I do want to thank my council colleagues for listening to me on some key concerns in my ward that they have included in the budget. Of course, the funding is scarce, and I really appreciated the remarks that Councillor Orlikow made. And I want to say there are opportunities for generating revenue. We need to make sure, we need to look at a development plan. I want to thank my councillor colleagues, Councillor Orlikow and Councillor Rollins, who give me pieces of their land dedication. Because I have no development in my ward, Madam Speaker, that I get a portion that is granted to me. Not every councillor gets that. That is something we decided as a committee, so that I have land dedication reserves, so I can help deal with my parks and stuff like that. So I want to thank them for that. But that's what we should be doing here. We talked about the impact fee. We should be having a development fee. We are one of few cities that have it, that don't have it. This would have a huge impact in making sure we have some of the resources we need, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gilroy. Mr. Mayor, your opportunity to close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank my colleagues for their comments today. Again, to everyone for their hard work on this budget and their engagement in it. Several things I want to just talk about and address in my close. First of all, I want to thank Councillors Gilroy and Emma Durand-Wood for their motion, their amending motion. I will be supporting the amending motion. I want to recognize our firefighter paramedics who are here and the head of UFFW, Nick Casper, for the dialogue that we've had. over the last several weeks and months, and I think it could be said for sure that it's fair to say that I think where he started and I started originally on this discussion, we're quite a ways apart. I think we both moved towards kind of, something that we can agree upon today. And so I want to thank my council colleagues for their work on this as well. And sincerely do appreciate the work that the members of the Fire Paramedic Service do. I think what's important as well, though, is in this budget, in addition to FTEs on the front line, I think we cannot underestimate the importance of the wellness clinic that's being proposed. We have many members right now. Some have said 70. I've heard up to 99 in the Fire Paramedic Service alone. Not counting paramedics, there's another in the EMS service of about another 100. So somewhere close to 200 of our staff members who are off right now for one reason or another. Some may be parental leave, and so folks are, assuming they're coming back from that. But I've said it consistently, and you've heard it around here, is these are our employees, these are our men and women, and we need to do all we can to make sure that they are healthy. And for those that can return to work, to get them back into the workplace and into the workforce. For those that maybe can't return to the front line again, to find them, help them and assist them successfully, if they can return to some work, get into some work that is meaningful for them, and then to be allowed to enable us to fill those frontline positions with new FTEs. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. It's both about prevention, to ensure fewer people, where possible, get injured and get sick, and then also health and return to work where that is appropriate. So the wellness clinic, I think, is very, very important. The combination of the wellness clinic, the investment in the FTEs, I think, this will give us some time now over the next several months to keep track of whether or not, the degree to which it impacts overtime numbers in 2026. I think, though, in addition to that, taking a look at the overall system that we're asking our emergency services to work in every day. I've said it before, we've got, in the case of firefighters, someone who's trained, skilled, professional firefighter who knows how to fight fires. And they end up responding to people in mental health crisis. We've got great people on the front lines as firefighters, but they're trained to fight fires. We need to get the right response to a person in crisis. I think it's incumbent on us as a city to make sure that when someone calls 911, they get the person they need. They get the resource they need. And I don't think we have that right now. That's why I've called for a fourth emergency response, which would be a community crisis program response. The investment in the 11 ELAP positions, those are important as well. And so the work that we're going to talk about tomorrow to reduce vacant and derelict buildings, the vacancy to vitality, also very critical as well. A couple of comments, though. Just to be clear, I don't know where my colleague from Transcona got the idea that someone has canceled the organics program. Nope, on the record, nobody has canceled that to this point. And the idea that somehow the communities fund that councillors have access to is, I think his words were something akin to, if not directly, slush fund. That is certainly not the case. It's a fund that has been set up. A campaign commitment I had set up with the rules that, like CIPG and PREP that govern it. The allocation of those funds are fully disclosed. It allows councillors the flexibility. In part because we listen to councillors like the councillor for Transcona on what that individual, other councillors would like to see that fund be established so that councillors can assist community members, their community organizations within their respective wards, and not only assist them, but also identify projects within their wards that they would like to prioritize as well. A couple of things that I don't think have really been spoken of much, but they are really, really critical investments that this budget does make. $17 million over 5 years for new spray pads. GCWCC funding to increase the ongoing support of our community centers and all the people that work for our community centers and the great community programming that is put on. $1 million in this budget cycle for youth programming in high needs areas so that we can get on to the prevention side and assist young people with good mentors to hopefully keep them on a good path and a right path, and they have positive role models and don't get caught up in crime or other things that would be detrimental to their lifestyle and ultimately detrimental to our community. A huge investment in roads, a historic investment over the next 6 years in our roads infrastructure. But as Councillor Lukes pointed out, a significant investment in active transportation as well is also included. In fact, over 6 years, $112.8 million total active transportation investment is being projected. That's significant in walking and cycling infrastructure to assist individuals to be healthier and give more communities more connection as well. I want to conclude, though, with my final comments about just where the budget is and where ultimately it goes in the next few years. I've worked with the zipper chart. We've all worked with the zipper chart for many years. Every year we close the zipper because we have a balanced budget legislation that we must balance our budget. But I want to acknowledge again and remind us as a council that this council in this term has had the courage to do what other councillors haven't, just frankly hasn't been done. We had the courage, unpopular as it is, though I didn't want to do it, to raise property taxes unlike any council has raised in 30 years. We had the courage to raise more revenue. We continue, like previous mayors and previous councils before, to work with AMM, mayors across this nation, to call for a new funding formula from the province of Manitoba. And across Canada, they're calling for it from the federal government and from every province. We live with this antiquated historic revenue generating source, which is called property taxes. Right now, the idea of, well, maybe we should look at growth fees or something. Right now, the federal government across Canada is saying to municipalities and cities in areas where they don't have growth fees, if you bring in growth fees or you raise them, we're taking all your federal money away on your housing programs. So I would say that we are, for sure, we have work to do. We really do. We made the case very strongly a couple of years ago with the current premier about the need for a new funding formula.
Councillor Duncan moves extension, 2 minutes.
And
All in favor?
Thank you.
Contrary,
And a new
carried.
funding model, we're not alone. I'm not the first mayor to do it. Almost every mayor that I know of, prior to me, every council I know of, prior to us, made the same call. But we're also making what I would say are important, and I'll call them courageous decisions, to say we're going to put the third phase of the North End Water Pollution Control Centre on our books. We're going to commit to fund that. That takes courage. It's needed, it's necessary, but we are the council right now. I'm not patting us on the back, I'm just stating the obvious to say it has to be done. We're stepping up and saying we're not going to avoid it anymore, we're going to do it. The transit network, that's a big change. It's a huge change. We know in the long run, I believe in the long run, it's the right decision. We have work to do. It hasn't rolled out the way I think any of us wanted it to. There's more work to do. There's more issues that we're addressing. But this budget addresses more of the issues to make it better. And so I would just say that we're tackling big things, big expensive things, but we're doing it for the future of the city, to build the kind of city that we know needs to be built. Folks, I don't like 100% of this budget. There's things in here I wish I could change, or I would like to change. If it was just my budget, it would look different. But a budget is a document that we work together on, and my final comment is this. This budget reflects the Strategic Priorities Action Plan and funds the plan that we put together as a council when we first got elected in this term of office. If you take a look, you will see that so much of the funding, that most of the priorities of the funding are reflected in our priorities, Strategic Priorities Action Plan as well. Is it a perfect budget? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. But is it a very good budget for the future of Winnipeg? I think it's a budget that reflects the decisions and the investments that we need to make as a council for the sake of today and for the sake of the future as well. And I ask for a recorded vote, and I ask for all councillors to support the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, I'll call the vote on amending motion 1. All in favor, please rise.
His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Brawadi, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Durandwood, Edie, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Orlico, Rollins, Santos, Wyatt, and Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma.
The vote, Madam Speaker, yeas 16, nays 0.
Amending motion 1 passes unanimously. And now on to the budget. Okay. The operating capital budget. All in favor, please rise. Yeah, the budget as amended.
His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Brawadi, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Edie, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Santos, and Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma.
Those opposed, please rise.
Councillors Durandwood, Orlico, Rollins, and Wyatt.
The vote, Madam Speaker, yeas 12, nays 4.
Okay. Budget passes. On to bylaws, Mr. Clerk. Yeah. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I move that bylaw number 131, 2025 be read a first time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 131 of 2025.
Madam Speaker, I move that the following bylaws be read a first time. Bylaw number 122, 2025, 123, 2025, 124, 2025, 125, 2025, 126, 2025, 127, 2025.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Okay, noted. Thank you.
Bylaws number 122 of 2025, bylaw 123 of 2025, bylaw 124 of 2025, bylaw 125 of 2025, bylaw 126 of 2025, and bylaw 127 of 2025.
Mr. Mayor?
I move that bylaws number 122, 2025 to 127, 2025, both inclusive, be read a second time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Noted.
Bylaws number 122 to 127, both inclusive.
And Madam Speaker, I move that Rule 50.2 of the procedure bylaw number 2007 be suspended and bylaws number 122, 2025 to 127, 2025, both inclusive, be read a third time and ordered to be signed and sealed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. That's noted. Thank you. Councillor Orlico, will you move adjournment? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Stay for roll call, Madam Clerk.
Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma, His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Brawadi, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Durandwood, Edie, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Orlico, Rollins, Santos, and Wyatt.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.